Welcome to the Almighty Johncast. I'm your host, John Yelland, and I'm here with my really good friend, Austin Bentley, of the band Fervents and Machines of Man and Apparition. We were just discussing, Austin and I go back a long ways, and we were in a band together at one point. It was Rack and Hide, and we did covers of like Nirvana and Iron Maiden, Power Rangers. Yeah. And then high school kid drama caused us to split. And I formed Prophecy, which became Shadowseer, and Austin formed Apparition. And we had this we hate each other high school kind of rivalry going on for a while. And it was Apparition versus Prophecy / Shadowseer. So that's that joke. Anyways, we are going to have a pretty interesting conversation today. I don't know if you can hear the fan, if that's distracting. I'll turn it off. Anyways, we're going to discuss horror movies and what makes them so gosh darn spooky. And so I have sort of a presentation of The Shining because that got the most reaction, that got the most votes in the poll we had. And then Austin has a little spiel, and then we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk all about it. So we're going to start off with The Shining. And bear with me because this is a little bit long, but it's thorough, and I think it's really good. But so there's a lot that's been said about The Shining, of course, because it's by Stanley Kubrick. So you can't take The Shining to mean what it says on it on the face value, you know. And that's true of just about all of his works, except maybe his first one or two. But anyways, so pertaining to the actual Shining, there's been a lot of analysis done on it. Connections to Native Americans and the extermination of the Native Americans, confirmation that Kubrick actually was party to hoaxing us with the moon landing. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to be talking about today. So there are only three primary characters, Jack, Wendy, and Danny Torrance. And of course, they're all alone in this hotel. And this gives us plenty of time for moments for these characters to be alone. And it's when we're alone that we're most vulnerable. And it's also when we are alone that our imagination takes the most liberties. Our paranoia can conjure horrible imagery and scenarios. It's also when we are alone that we come to face ourselves. And this, I think, is a big part of The Shining, because these characters are alone a lot and they have to face this reality themselves, not only, but also as a family unit. Our paranoia and imagination also takes flight because of planting. The Shining and other quality horror movies use a term called planting, which is basically, I mention this thing and then this thing later on comes into play. So The Shining and other such films make plantings, and The Shining plants it early on that the family that lived in the Overlook Hotel, of course, before them went crazy. The father went crazy and killed everybody. Let's see. The Shining and other quality horror movies plant things before shit hits the fan, so that when our characters are facing the unknown or alone, we as an audience are primed for what kinds of horrors we might face. With The Shining, we're primed with the idea of Jack going crazy and killing everyone, and this, of course, does play out in The Shining. What makes The Shining so terrifying is it's about a man who tries to murder his family. On the face, this may not seem super scary, and I think that's partially because we've become kind of desensitized to the idea. But if you ask yourself why this has had such an impact, not just for how esoteric and nightmarish the movie is, but why a man killing his own family is so scary. A common thing in horror movies is they will take a comfortable setting or a situation such as your home and introduce something threatening into that situation. Your home is a place of security, and here comes this horror movie showing that the home is in fact not secure. With time, we have seen horror movies find ever more creative places of security and flip them upside down. For example, you have A Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, how innovative is that? Because now it's not just your home or your bed or your mother that's a place of danger, but it's in your dreams. So that's something to look for in creative, groundbreaking horror movies, is finding ever more creative places of security to disrupt. So to connect that with The Shining, you have a father should be the ultimate source of protection for a child. But this guy's an absolute nutter, even from the beginning. It's revealed in the beginning that Jack got drunk and dislocated Danny's arm. And from the very beginning, it's indicated that Jack is already a danger. What's even worse is Jack sexually abuses his son. This is crazy, but we're going to hit on it later. And it's communicated in a way that's very subtle, but once you notice it, it's absolutely horrifying and becomes ever more obvious and disturbing on following views. This points to another interesting element of horror. An effective horror movie puts you into the shoes of the character, making you experience the same kind of fear that the character is experiencing. For example, as you watch Hitchcock's movie Vertigo, you begin to feel afraid of heights. So what are we feeling in The Shining? Well, it's a clever double effect we have here, because on the one hand, we're effectively put in the shoes of the victims, Wendy and Danny, but also Jack. One element of The Shining that I think is especially horrifying, for me at least, is we're kind of put in the shoes of Jack Torrance. I mean, think how annoying, however good-hearted, Wendy is in this movie. Don't you kind of yourself want to shut her up too? I don't think this is on accident. Stephen King, who notoriously hated Kubrick's version of The Shining, wrote, "The protagonist is a man who has broken his son's arm, who has a history of child beating, and who has beaten himself. And as a young father," Stephen King speaking of himself, he says, "and as a young father myself with 2 children, I was horrified by my occasional feelings of real antagonism toward my children. Won't you ever stop? Won't you ever go to bed? There are times when I felt very angry toward my own children and have even felt as though I could hurt them." A man with a sharp weapon isn't really anything new or scary. We've already got plenty of these with Chucky, Scream, Friday the 13th, Halloween, and so on. But what makes Jack especially frightening is his relationship to his victims. But also the way that Kubrick makes us identify with him, however much we may not want to. Another point I found interesting about The Shining was the Overlook Hotel and the way that the haunting actually plays out. This is an element that I think was subtle but also extremely effective, and it contributes to my testimony against using jump scares more than once or twice per film. In many haunted house films or horror films in general, the place of haunting eventually ends up overtly attacking those it's terrorizing. The gloves come off, so to speak. But with The Shining, you never see the hotel do anything obvious. It never actually attacks the Torrances. The family is tormented by visions of blood and death, but the hotel never does anything kinetically on screen. For example, a door doesn't shut on someone's fingers or something. Stephen King, again, who I noted actually hated the film, said of Kubrick that, quote, "I think he set out to make a film that hurts people." It's strange how Stephen King himself might not have understood at the time just how right he was, I think. In addition to putting you in the shoes of Jack Torrance, which is disturbing enough, there's the added peculiarity that the film steers clear of cinematic tropes in horror. While most horror films liberally use close shots to make us feel claustrophobic or frantic, to feel claustrophobic, and frantic editing to make us feel the chaos, The Shining doesn't do this. Instead, the film was shot almost entirely on a wide-angle lens, which emphasizes the great space surrounding the characters and makes us feel just how small the characters are. An added benefit to this is that when something does happen, it's all the more shocking, such as when the naked hag appears or when Danny turns the corner and sees the little girl twins. And what's more, when these surprises do happen, they circumvent the usual route that horror films take. I mean, like, you turn the camera and, oh, there's the big scary thing. But what The Shining does differently is before it emphasizes the scary thing, it drinks deep the reaction of the person who is having the experience. Two examples are when Danny sees the twin little girls in the rec room. It holds on his reaction before showing us the little girls. And also when Jack Torrance is in room 237 and he's making out with the woman and he notices something, and then it goes to the mirror and you see he's hugging this decrepit hag. This builds our anticipation, because what the heck is he looking at? The film is broadcasting loudly that something is wrong, which makes us anticipate all the more that reveal of what is wrong. You notice how much more effective this is than a jump scare. When you're watching a horror movie and things get going, you notice that you're in a state of anticipation. You're tense. You've got all this tension built up. But when a jump scare happens, you jump and release all of that energy and maybe laugh to yourself and exchange glances with the person next to you. Oh, ooh, I'm embarrassed. Ooh.
That's what you say.
Ooh, I'm embarrassed.
In the movie theater.
While you're watching Paranormal Activity. But the thing is, like, that disperses all of that built up tension. And then from that point forward, you have to build up that tension again. You have to build up, and that can be difficult. And sometimes you don't have tension built up sufficiently again by the next time your jump scare comes. I compared this with something. Yeah, it's kind of like how having sex every single day would make sex less special. Sex is great, but if you have it twice a week or something, it's going to make those releases of tension all the more special.
Exactly, and that's why you should only do it once in your life.
Once in your life. One scare, one sex, that's all you need.
And that concludes...
All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. Have sex once in your life. This is going to be fun. But yeah, this pinpoints a particular strength of The Shining, which is its ambiguity. And it goes back to the hotel thing, because the more you show something, the less special it is. There's something to be said for not showing everything. And the way The Shining does this is so effective because you start to doubt whether the hotel is even haunted or if the family is just going insane. There's, of course, a myriad of interpretations on this, and I fall on the end of the spectrum where I don't think the hotel is haunted at all, but you can read it that way on face value, and it's still perfectly coherent. But compare this ambiguity in Kubrick's Shining to the 1997 Stephen King movie, which is not ambiguous at all. In fact, it's quite on the nose, and a lot of the ways that Kubrick's Shining pulls through really remarkably, Stephen King's film version of The Shining is laughable in the same, like, opposite way. But it's no, and then the last point on, like, this particular tract is it's no secret that The Shining was a nightmare to work on. It's well documented how horrible it was for Shelley Duvall in particular, but also the other actors whose takes for one shot sometimes went well into the triple digits. What Kubrick did was make these actors perform the same take again and again. And as the actors became more exhausted, less conscious, more desperately experimental, you get more and more outlandish, wild, and extreme takes. And according to the editor of the film, these are the takes that Kubrick generally chose to keep. And I found it interesting because this is part of what marks the difference between silly acting in The Room with Tommy Wiseau, for example, and The Shining, because both of these films were actually criticized for their over-the-top, even cartoonish acting. But The Shining stands out because for as over-the-top it is, it's actually quite effective, especially given how already dreamlike the movie is. So all of this is to say that The Shining is crafted in such a way to be unsettling and frightening on every level, including especially the soundtrack and sound design. And I made this planting earlier, but to give that planting a payoff, one thing I mentioned that I want to cover is the topic of Jack Torrance abusing Danny sexually. This is never overtly communicated in the film, but as I said, once you notice it, all the puzzle pieces put together a picture and a conclusion that you can't really unsee once you've seen it. This is all covered by Rob Ager quite extensively, a film analyst that I really like. And I'll link his work on this topic in the description below. But for us, we'll start out with the man in the bear costume. The man in the bear costume only shows up once, and it's out of nowhere. It's like, WTF, man. When Wendy is fleeing Jack during the climax of the film, she's running through the house, and all of this spooky imagery gets loaded onto her. But she's running away, and she turns the corner, and she sees a bear giving oral sex to a butler. And the open patch on the bear's buttocks adds to the disturbing sexual suggestions. And it's worth noting, too, that the butler, or the image of a butler, is repeatedly associated with Jack Torrance. So she turns the corner, freaks out at seeing this bear giving oral sex to a butler. And it's also noteworthy that the framing of this shot for the bear fellatio scene is the exact same framing as when Danny is in their home bathroom standing on the stool and brushing his teeth. Bears in the film are repeatedly directly associated with young Danny. You notice earlier in the film when the psychiatrist visits their home, Danny's laying on a large teddy bear pillow. And it's curious that the eyes on this pillow look eerily similar to the floor dials on the elevator that erupts with blood. I don't think it's a coincidence either that the mouth on this bear pillow is large and bright red. Blood, blood, blood. You also notice that Jack Torrance, when sitting in the lobby of the Overlook Hotel, he's reading a Playgirl magazine, which of course features erotic imagery of men. And what's noteworthy too is the edition of this magazine is January 1978, and one of the prominently featured articles on the cover is, quote, "Incest, Why Parents Sleep with Their Children." It's also worth noting that when the psychiatrist visits Danny and he's lying on the bed, he covers his groin, just as he does in the very uncomfortable scene in which he asks Jack, "You had never hurt us, would you?" And we'll refer to this as the fatherly love scene. And it's worth noting, too, that in this scene where he's like, "You had never hurt Mom or I, would you?" And he's like, "Why would you ask that?" There's a mirror prominently featured in the room. You see in Danny's bedroom in the Overlook Hotel, of course, just more connections with the bear. You see in his Overlook bedroom, two bears, one big and one little. Coincidence? I think not. Now, when Jack enters room 237, I think this is not actually taking place in the Overlook Hotel. And why I say that is room 237, the carpet is completely different. You never see that carpet design anywhere else. And of course, all of the sound design is completely unique and echoey and different. And some other reasons I'll pinpoint here in a second too. But it's really gross and disturbing that when Jack enters room 237, well, the thing is, you don't really have the idea that it's Jack at first because it's Danny who goes in. In fact, when he puts his hand on the door, it's a child's hand, so it's Danny. And this is being intercut with a couple different shots, and one of which is Danny freaking out, like convulsing, and he has spittle in his mouth, and it's very suggestive, I would say. When Jack enters room 237, it's a point of view shot, which is the only time I think I ever saw that in the film. And like I said, when he opens the door, it's Danny's hand, but then you cut and it's Jack standing there. And when he opens up the door to the bathroom where the hag is in, if memory serves me right, too, the voice that calls out is Danny's voice. So all of this is to say, I think it's obvious. I think it's heavily implied that Danny is the one having this experience in room 237. So I think it's safe to say that Jack has been sexually abusing Danny throughout their entire stay at the Overlook. Room 237, the ordeal that takes place in there, I think is a look into Danny's psyche. Rob Ager, the aforementioned film analyst I mentioned, he says of this scene, Danny, manifested as his own father in room 237, embraces the naked woman and sees the horror of his predicament in a mirror. Jack embraced Danny on the bed in the fatherly love scene, from which Danny would have also been able to see his own predicament in a mirror. This is the same mirror in which Wendy hugs Danny before seeing the red rum graffiti on the bathroom door. Not only that, but Wendy is wearing Jack's blue robe. There are a lot of parallels going on here, end quote. Wendy seems to know what's happening between Jack and Danny. She writes off Danny's imaginary friend story about room 237 as just plain silly. Because you remember he comes to his mom and he has bruises on him and his clothes are ripped. And he said it was Tony. And then also when the psychiatrist from the beginning of the movie asks Danny about his imaginary friend, she stands cross-armed and interjects that Tony is just Danny's imaginary friend, as if trying to gloss over the situation. It's also noteworthy that Jack, and also none of the men in the movie wear any wedding rings. So there's no love between Jack and Wendy at any point in the movie. Any attempts by Wendy to spend quality time with Jack are also shut down. For example, when she asks if he'd like to go for a walk, he declines. So if you still think I'm making stuff up, just take what I've said and keep it in your mind while I read this. This is dialogue from when the psychiatrist is asking Danny about his imaginary friend, Tony. Danny, Tony is a little boy that lives in my mouth. Doctor, if you were to open your mouth, could I see Tony? Danny, no. Doctor, why not? Danny, because he hides. Doctor, where does he go? Danny, to my stomach. Doctor, does Tony ever ask you to do things? Danny, I don't want to talk about Tony anymore. I got goosebumps because this is actually really, really disturbing. But yeah, that's, I think, a very clear picture of the sexual abuse that's happening in this movie, and it's really disturbing. So yeah, again, when Wendy is running through the Overlook in the climax and she turns the corner to see the bear giving oral sex to the butler, who is, by the way, repeatedly associated with Jack, could it be that Wendy, this is her finally coming to terms with what her husband has been doing to Danny? Food for thought, but in any case, if this subtle element of the plot really is true, then it adds significantly to the horror of such a visceral, disgusting, horrible. So that's all I've got on the thing. Some really uplifting stuff.
No, look at all the comments we missed.
Yeah. I was reading. I prepared a little essay on that. James says planting equals foreshadowing. Yeah, that's pretty close. Do you want to explain planting in a more concise way?
Yeah, basically it's just like it's an intentional shot of something. It's either like an item or like a gun. Like if there's like someone throws a gun or drops the gun on the floor, like like without a shroud of doubt, someone is going to get to the gun later on in that fight sequence. That's a quick plan and payoff. And then psychological thrillers, we usually plant something that's blatantly obvious, but you don't know it was until they reveal the great secret at the end of the film. But yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, the example I think that we both heard was if they show a gun, then that gun has to be used before the end of the sequence, I think. Anyways.
Yeah. And it's not just with stuff like that. I mean, so when it comes to filmmaking, even though movies back then were relatively cheaper to make compared to how much it cost to do a film these days, I think it's scaled. When you have so many people, a part of a team or a crew that produces these films, when you look at these sets every single thing in there is intentional because they're spending millions of dollars to do it. So when you pull out like all these coincidences in The Shining, it's like there is no way that they were randomized. Like there's no way that that was left to chance because of how much money is put into that. Like there is a set designer, there's costume designers, there's lighting designers. Like every single thing is intentional, or else they wouldn't do it because that's money that they wouldn't have to spend. And when filmmakers are doing this, like their intention is to create a film that compels people that also at the end of the day makes money. So they're not going to spend money they don't have to, right? So it's almost like every single thing in a movie is planted. Every single thing in a movie has purpose. Every line that a person says in the film has a meaning. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there, you know? So, but yeah, absolutely.
That's part of why bad movies are so fun, because
you know how much money was spent on everything in there.
Not only that, but like confusing, like sometimes a big emphasis will be given to, you know, the mother who definitely has breast cancer, and then they never bring it up in the movie again.
Right.
Like,
that is, yeah.
That's it.
And that's what that's what makes movies scary. is the reality of how much, you know, effort goes into something and just watch it, you know, fall apart.
Al says the concept that a thing such as a gun, which is mentioned or shown, must be used later on, is known as Chekhov's gun, if memory serves. Interesting. There you go. It already has a name. We call it a planting or a payoff, but yeah, that's neat. Did you want to talk about horror movies, and did you have anything to say before we just go in point by point and talk about the movies?
Oh wow, look at that.
Yeah, I know.
So I have a take, and we will be able, just looking at this list, we will be able to point out what I'm about to talk about.
There's going to be a lot of opportunities.
So when I when I was a young man at the age of either 18 or 19, and if Casey's here, he might remember this. We decided one night that we were going to have like a little movie night at his apartment. Yeah, he knows what's coming. So this was back in the day of Blockbuster, and we were looking through the horror section because it was like, oh, I love horror movies or whatever. And Jamie shows me the Blair Witch Project, and by some miracle, I had never heard of this movie. I'd never seen an ad or a trailer for it. I had no idea what it was. And Casey tells me that it's basically an actual collection of found footage of 3 young adults that get murdered in the woods, and it was released to the public. And I just took his word for it. Because Casey has a very sly sense of humor, because he is so, like, his poker face is right there. So I watched the entirety of the Blair Witch Project thinking it was 100% legitimate. And I actually think that I suffered from a moderate or soft case of PTSD from that movie, because even after watching the director's cut with all of the commentary of how they did every scene and listening to them talk about it throughout the whole film, I did not go camping for 2 years after I saw that movie, because the damage had been done. And the scary thing, the thing that scared me so bad, was the belief that it was real. Like there is this thing, whether it was a human, whether it was like a paranormal thing or a witch or whatever, there is this thing that actually exists, and it killed these people. And the events that led up to it. You never see a damn thing in that movie. All you hear is like creepy sounds and stuff, but it's like the thought that something so dark was real and living in the world scared the hell out of me. And so from that point on, I started thinking about, well, why was I so scared? Like, whether it was real or not, like I was in no immediate danger. And over the course of, 10 years, I've realized that there is a common trait in almost every single horror film. And it's those that do not, or that do not follow this trend, or are cleverly manipulative of it. Every single horror film in general has some sort of monster in it. And this began with the first horror films. Like, you have all the classics. You have like Nightmare on Elm Street. You have
Dracula.
you have Dracula. You have werewolf. Jason. Like, you have Scream. Like, there's always this killer on the loose because this killer is gonna kill people or whatever. And I realized that fear in itself is a reaction to the perceived inevitability that you are going to die. And horror films have basically just come up with a creative way to diversify the ways that people can die under the hands of a monster. For example, so those are the classics, but throughout the history of horror films, that has continued. Like The Ring, one of the most groundbreaking films. I think it's on this list. Yeah, we can talk about all those, but The Ring, there is a little girl that comes out of a TV and sucks your soul out, basically, right? And it's the creativity of how this thing operates and how it gets to you before it even kills you. So, and this goes through everything. It's like no matter what, at the end, the character will either die or not. Against the evil monster.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that, it's like, are movies actually scary, or is it just the perceived or the suspension of belief that causes us to believe that we could die, through the film? And is fear only a reaction to potentially dying? Is fear only a reaction to death and not the events that are creepy or whatever?
That's a very interesting take. You'd shared some of that with me before, but that's a very interesting way to look at horror movies, is ever more elaborate or simplified, essentially, ways of killing off your characters or putting them in life-threatening situations.
Right. So, and we can look at scary movies that were so groundbreaking. So like The Blair Witch, that's a great example. That kind of, they were the pioneers of the found footage movies, basically. And then we had another wave with Paranormal Activity, which was essentially just another found footage, but they found a creative way to produce that using hidden cameras or security cameras. But it's the same premise. There's this thing that you never see that kills the characters in it. So I feel like there's and you find this in film, you find this in games, you find this in stories, and it's the things that happen between the killings that cause the killings to have so much more weight. For example, It. I actually think
Which one?
It, the book.
Okay, the book.
The book. So, with Curry. That's a Goosebumps movie, and those are not actually scary. So with It, I think it's hilarious that that Stephen King called Kubrick out for making a film that would hurt people, because if you have never read the book It, the movie is like a sliver. It is like a tiny little microscopic piece of ice on a glacier of the things that happen in that book. Like the book is this thick. I think it's actually longer than the Bible.
I thought I had it in here.
And the things that happen, it's like, yes, there is this thing, and I'll try not to spoil things, but I get on my rant. So if you intend to read the book, sucks to be you. But there are things that happen, and yes, there's this entity, and it does these horrible things to children, yes, but also every single goddamn adult in that book is pure evil, and they do some of the most heinous things that you can imagine. And Stephen King put it all in there, and he doesn't omit a single detail from these things. Like, you can tell that he was under the influence of drugs when he wrote that book. And at the end of the day, like the events that happen with Pennywise the clown, the book would be it'd be like this thick. It would be about the same length as The Shining as a book, because the things that it does is actually almost on par with the things that happen to the children naturally, either by them doing it to themselves or by their parents. Mm-hmm. So I think that it is the fear of death that causes fear in general, and it's the misguided or the distorted or the just simply messed up events that happen in between those small moments where a character either does live or die.
I'm not trying to derail, but just neurons are firing now. But I wonder this hypothesis that all fear ultimately finds its source in death. Because the first example I thought of, because I'm like, not that I'm like trying to undercut you or anything, but it's like, okay, here's a hypothesis, let's test it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, when are other times I felt fear? We've both been broken up with before, and I know that when you're waiting for that text where the nail goes through your heart, there's that adrenaline, that fear. That fear is the only word that came to my mind. That was the first example I thought of, is when you know you're going to be broken up with and you're just waiting for it to come. So I wonder if that connects somehow, or
sort of. I say it would because there's this common saying that when you have a major heartbreak, a piece of you dies. And I actually feel like that's real. Maybe not in the physical sense, but like it kind of takes a piece of you out that, depending on the person, can grow back. But often we see in society that trauma, like a severe sense of trauma, follows some breakups, depending on if it was like abusive or if it was like a back and forth kind of towing thing. But yeah, no, I totally agree. Like there is a sense of you that dies depending on the severity of that kind of thing. So I still feel like that falls along the same line.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering, the first thing I thought of is like maybe it ties into like a fear of dying alone, or
exactly. I mean, you could even argue that it falls to our primal instincts. It's like, I have failed as a potential mate for this other sex, basically, and now I have failed as my as my own, I don't even know, perpetuator.
Yeah. That's what I was going to first was that idea of it undercutting you as a person. Like it's a value claim on your worth as a human being, and when you've been broken up with it, that's sort of rejected. It feels like you've been dehumanized or something.
Yeah, Al makes a good point. So he says, sounds more to me like they're exploiting the fear of the unknown, and that's absolutely true. And my argument is that they use that to manipulate your sense of, well, wait a minute, like there are other ways that I could die or perish, or maybe even death isn't the end, and then I would suffer for all of eternity. And there are people that do. So it's like the unknown. The thing that I personally find most scary in films is the stuff that you don't see and the stuff that isn't said, and the stuff that the director has intentionally done this so that you figure it out internally, and it will never be spoken of. But everyone who sees that film knows it, right? So, but no, I think that's actually one of the most powerful tools to like nail in the point of a horror film.
And Zach also says, speaking of cosmic horror, that cosmic horror taps into your fear of being totally inconsequential in the universe. And I'll say that out of all of the flavors of horror, I've had the least experience with quality cosmic horror. Because I think it is because it's so difficult to convey something existential like that through the medium of film. I think it's much more effective with literature, like with H.P. Lovecraft, because that's a medium where you're exclusively using your imagination.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that there's definitely nihilists that excel in horror film and they do it to get their point across, their belief that all is pointless, that all is meaningless, right? And so, like, I'm trying to think of an example.
I was just going to ask you.
Cannibal Holocaust is a great example.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's a film that is literally just made to make you think very poorly of other humans, right? Like it's just disgusting and gory. I think a movie that sort of meets in the middle is the Saw series, or a movie series, because it's like all these people did some messed up stuff and they're going to die for it because of some twisted sense of justice because of Jigsaw or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't really like the Saw movies because it's like,
gore porn.
Yeah.
I think the first one was a neat premise, but
Yeah.
I was going to ask though, what is if you had to pick one movie that you felt like garbage afterward? It doesn't have to be a horror, but if you can think of a horror movie that just actually made you come as close to feeling totally inconsequential in the universe as possible.
I'd have to think about that one, but definitely one that I just saw within the last week. It's called Vivarium. It is starring the guy who was in.
I remember he's a black guy, isn't he?
No.
Or was that the other one you sent me?
He was the guy in the Social Network movie.
Oh
that guy.
yeah.
I don't remember his name.
Oh, Mark Wahlberg. No, Mark Zuckerberg. That's the one.
Yeah.
Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah, that guy. That movie made me feel like a piece of shit. And I know the director wanted me to feel that way. And he did a really good job. Another movie that made me feel like that was Midsummer.
That one's on the list.
That movie, I feel like Stephen King's comment should be directed to a movie like that. Because The Shining, yeah, it's terrifying. It's my favorite horror film. And it's beautifully done. And I think Stephen King is just jealous that he didn't come up with it. Because I've read The Shining. It's nothing like the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like the book is awesome. It's worthy of what it's received. Absolutely. And the movie that Kubrick directed is also just as worthy. But Midsummer has some of the most messed up stuff for the point and for nothing but the sake of being messed up in it. And I know the director did that intentionally to make people upset. And I think they touch on stuff that is actually bordering on the line of hurting people mentally. Like I'm still mad at that movie.
Let's put that in our back pocket just for the sake of organization. Go through the list in order.
Oh, right.
Okay.
I don't know what's on the list. So
Okay. Well, all right. Let's talk about The Shining first. Then.
Okay. We'll talk about The Shining.
I talked about The Shining a lot already. I think it's a brilliant. It makes brilliant use of space to make you feel small. Also, like you were talking, ambiguity, like the Blair Witch Project. I think it's remarkable in that it is ambiguous enough, because especially with the Blair Witch Project, one big reason why I think both of these movies are scarier than any kind of slasher is because you've had strange experiences too, right?
Absolutely.
And the thing is, like when you have a strange or supernatural experience or something, it's never a monster. It always is ambiguous. And so I think it's more relatable, those kinds of movies.
Yeah. Going back to the space, I actually do think that the hotel is actively trying to hurt them. One of the most iconic scenes in the film is when Danny is riding his tricycle around the halls. I think he does this like twice in the film or something, but you'll notice he leaves the main open area where Jack Torrance is working on his typewriter. He like works in the main foyer or whatever you call it. And Danny rides past him under the stairs and he makes, I think, a right-hand turn and then another right-hand turn. And that would have led him back into the foyer, but it doesn't. It actually just keeps going. Like the hotel, I feel like actually it like warps itself. It's like I feel like it's actually like alive. It's like a living thing, and it becomes a labyrinth, and it directs the characters to where they're supposed to go in the film.
It's really neat that you bring that up because that's actually a really big point in film analysis on The Shining. Is the impossible layout of the hotel. The hotel is laid out impossibly, and Kubrick went to very specific lengths to make it that way. So yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder, like, I don't know. I mean, I think with Kubrick, there's the face value and it's totally coherent and it works at face value, but there's also the subtle narrative or the sub-narrative. Because like with Clockwork Orange, you think that the protagonist is being cured of his violent tendencies. Mm-hmm. But in reality, I was watching another video by Rob Ager on Clockwork Orange, and he makes a very convincing case that they came up with an agreement with Alex, I think his name is Alex DeLarge. They came up with an agreement with Alex to play ball on this new therapy. And so basically he is scot-free to go early as long as he acts and verifies, to the public that this treatment works. So it's like it works as a movie if it is if he has been cured, and it works as a movie if he hasn't been cured. So
that movie, it's like watching the adult version of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Like, it's just so
disturbing in its own
ways. It's like watching a Pink Floyd music video, basically. I think he hasn't changed one bit by the end of the film. You can see it in his eyes. He's still he's still a maniac.
Because he also has the fantasies about all of the naked women and killing people.
Absolutely.
So
didn't work.
Yeah,
it's a good movie. That's I think that's all I have to say on The Shining. You touched on all the different points, like the fact that it's a bear and a butler. Like the bear, I mean, it's semblance of a child's like pajamas or costume. Like it's so blatant. Like Kubrick wouldn't do that just to do it. Like he would there, because you can watch horror films that do like demented stuff, and it's like those are the people that listen to Insane Clown Posse. I think that shit like that is scary. And it's like they do it for that without any second thought under it. Like there is no underlying reason why they do things in films, and it shows. Like it's why that there's this like 90% of the horror films on Netflix are the things that you would see in a red box, right? It's just trash. But what's really interesting about movies like that is they cost so little to make, they still make money. And so
that's the thing that's frustrating.
Yeah, they keep making them.
There's no like punishment for bad horror movies. A bad horror movie comes out, all of the idiot high school kids go and they take their dates, and it makes a boatload of money because they're super cheap to produce. Like Fantasy Island. Fantasy Island was supposed to come out in theaters, but then coronavirus happened, and I was expecting it to bomb. But now I drive up to the gas station and I see Fantasy Island is in a red box. And I'm like, did it really lose that much money? Like, I think it'll still come out being all right.
Yeah. I haven't checked the comments for a sec, so I'm just reading through them.
I'm keeping an eye on it, trying to incorporate like the Cosmic Fear stuff, and patristic are kind of. We've got what's his name, Errol, in here. Yeah, as far as adaptations of Lovecraft go, I watched The Color Out of Space.
Don't talk about that movie.
I'm not going to spoil anything. All I will say is, it's very creative. It does some things very well. And
wow, this sounds like a good movie.
Well, the other thing is, I think it gets cheesy and a little bit too incoherent. Well, I mean that's Lovecraft, but the one thing, can I talk about one thing about Nicolas Cage's acting?
He's an amazing actor. That's what you.
He is.
Yeah.
Can I talk about one thing? It's not a plot point.
Fine.
Okay, so there's this element of Nicolas Cage's character in The Color Out of Space where he has dad issues or something. Like he never could live up to his dad's expectations. And when he starts going into his dad and he starts talking like his dad, he's talking like Trump. He literally is doing like a Trump impression when he slips into his dad's personality. It's the strangest thing. Nicolas Cage slips into a Donald Trump. I can't do impressions, but it was so strange. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Jill, by the way. Thank you for tuning in. Yeah, that's a movie that it's like, there are certain films that I just know. I'll like, through the faith of my friends who have seen it and just by my own cruddy intuition, there are films that I know will be good. And so I have to like prepare myself mentally to watch some of these films because I've been burned by films that I wasn't ready to watch. For example, what is it? It's probably on this list. What is it called? Mandy. Mandy is the best film ever created. And I was not ready to see it when I saw it. And I watched it with John.
I didn't know what to say about that movie.
Well, and in that, I it's possible that you could not prepare to watch a film like that. It was miraculous.
It was unique movie.
It was so tremendous. Panos Cosmatos is the greatest director alive right now. He has to be. He has the most amazing imagination ever. I love his movies.
I will say, Panos Cosmatos, Craig Zoller, and Jeremy Saulnier. I used to think that film was dying,
Mhm.
but I think there is an underdog team of really good quality directors coming out nowadays. And on reflection, I remember Martin Scorsese. He said these new movies that come out, they're not cinema, they're not films, they're amusement park rides.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I agree.
I mean, it is like and that attitude has served me. When I saw Cabin in the Woods in theaters, I was intentionally going to see a one-off horror film.
A Cabin in the Woods
Yeah,
movie.
like I could eat. Yeah, exactly.
Evil
Cabin-
Dead.
Yeah, and I'd eat some popcorn. I'd go home and I would completely forget the film, and it'd be like, it's like going through a haunted house in the summer or whenever it was released. But that mentality got me to see an amazing movie. That was such a good movie.
That was the best bait and switch movie ever.
I
And I remember you telling me, like, I'm not going to say anything. You just have to go watch it.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go see it. And I was like, wow. If you haven't seen Cabin in the Woods, you don't really know what we're talking about. But it's a really don't Google it at all. If you're gonna just go to Amazon or Netflix and watch it.
Yeah.
Maybe
we should move down the list. I keep going to stuff.
I'll address this one because Patristic Arcana was Errol, I think. He said, I've seen about half a dozen based directly on Lovecraft. It doesn't help that none of them had much of a budget. Then you get things inspired by Lovecraft, like In the Mouth of Madness. That I wanted to address that again because some really well-intentioned Lovecraft movies. I think you saw one with me was From Beyond.
Yes.
And have you seen Reanimator?
Yes.
All right, those two are actually pretty good. And In the Mouth of Madness, too, which is a John Carpenter movie. That one is flawed, but I think it's well-meaning. And I think it's actually pretty effective, but not like a great movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, do we want to move down?
Yeah,
the list?
sure.
Do you have any thoughts on Halloween? Another, speaking of John Carpenter?
I mean, I don't really care for those movies, especially the ones that get like, I don't even know how many Halloween movies there's been, like with Myers and all that stuff. So I respect them as the pioneers that sort of invented the slasher like industry, or I don't even know what to call it, but the movement of slasher films. But those are the kind of films that you watch on Halloween. Like it is a thematic. It's like an event to watch a movie like that. It's not something that you just sit down one day and like, let's watch the Halloween movies, right? Like it belongs. It's almost like Christmas music in a way. Like you only hear Christmas music around Christmas time. You only watch these like classic slasher films around Halloween because that's how they were, and that's how they were marketed. Like they were released around Halloween. Like the movie is called Halloween. So they're not my jam, but they paved the way for where we are now. So.
One thing that's very interesting to talk about, but I'll offer my praises of Halloween. Two things that Halloween did that I think was actually rather smart. Number one, the use of voyeurism. This is not really anything super new, but in Halloween, you repeatedly have these subtle shots that are framed in such a way that make you feel like you're looking in, and that goes back to the opening sequence, which, as far as I know, is something that had never been done up until that point, which was a point of view. So, like speaking of all that Shining stuff, putting you in the shoes of like Jack Torrance or Wendy. But here's a movie that starts out putting you, the viewer, in the perspective of you put on the mask and now you go and you kill the guy and the woman. You go kill them. And then on top of that, the big reveal is, it's a 6-year-old boy who committed the murders.
Yeah.
So, but then the really interesting thing, if you're interested in this kind of thing, I would recommend looking up a YouTube channel called In Praise of Shadows. And they had a sort of study on the Hellraiser franchise. And because you mentioned, Halloween has all these movies coming out, I found out what that's all about. You want to know what it is about? It's about maintaining the rights to the movies.
Oh, is it?
Because
it becomes public domain.
If you don't use it, you lose it. And so they have to
Yeah.
crank out a Hellraiser movie every so many years to keep hold of the title. Otherwise, it goes up for sale or something or whatever. So every 8 years, they fart out a Hellraiser movie.
I mean, I don't even know if they might have sold off the rights or they might have just abandoned them. And hopefully they did because with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, those movies are the worst horror movies ever made.
I really like the first one.
It's like going through the terror ride at Lagoon. It is the worst corny swear word on film. They're so bad.
I've seen the 2006 or whatever remake.
Exactly. They made so many different like universes of this thing. And then there's like ones with like puppets or they're like wax people. I don't even know how to describe them. They look like they're from children's shows. It's like literally walking through some sort of messed up Halloween shop for 2 hours every single time. And I thought when I was like, oh, Bubba, like the cannibal, like he is like one of the most iconic horror characters in film history. He chops people up with a chainsaw and then he skins them and then he eats them. Like that sounds brutal. I got to see this. And then I watch it and it's like the most disjointed pile of trash I've ever seen.
To be fair though, what did you think of the first one? Because I actually
it's awful. That is a nihilist movie, and I have no idea what they're talking about when they say it has like vegan undertones because it's like no, it's just like no, like that.
I'll send you the analysis I've seen on it.
Oh, it's bad.
All right. Alien.
That's a good movie.
That's a good movie.
That's one of my favorites.
We agree on that one.
Yes. Alien. Again, like there's a monster, right? Like it's
in the title of the movie.
Exactly.
Alien.
But it's like so. It goes back to the whole like idea that horror movies have fundamentally stayed the same throughout all of film history. There's always an entity or a monster or something unseen that is actively trying to kill the character or characters. But Alien, I think, does something amazing with it's a Kubrick film, right? So the characters act completely different than what is normally anticipated from character dialogue in any film.
Mm-hmm.
Kubrick's films stand completely apart from any others because of the way that they are written, the way that the characters interact, the way that they take pauses, the way that they look at each other. Like it creates an entirely different atmosphere. So in short, like if you were to take the premise of Alien, and the way that it was created and filmed, and then you pair it up almost like with a mirror up against the A Word, the remake that they did,
the remake of
the universe,
AVP.
No. And it's not
Alien Covenant.
No. It's with
Prometheus.
Prometheus. Sorry, that's not an A. So it's like if you took Alien in its original form and reflected it against Prometheus, it is an entirely different film. However, there is still an alien or whatever that is actively trying to kill the characters. Same premise, completely different films, right? And it's because like you even have the same character types. There's this doctor, there's the soldier, there's the android. Like it's almost it really is almost the exact same premise, and yet they're entirely different. Prometheus is almost like watching an action film. Alien is actual terror, like because you feel the human element from those characters. You feel the drama that goes on between them. You feel like when Ripley is hiding from the alien at the film, like by that point, you are convinced she is going to die in space alone in this horrific way, right? Why is that?
I think two things. Number one, because she's the only one left alive. Number two, because I think we identify with Ripley because, as Al aptly pointed out, she's the one who fought the strongest. No, I think she was the only one who fought to maintain the contamination protocol, which we, as the audience, are the people in the back going, don't you go in there. Don't you do that. Don't do it. Don't bring him back on board. He got an alien on his face. So, I think we naturally lean toward Ripley more.
Yeah. We do, but at the same time, it shows the human aspect. Like like all of us in the back are yelling, "Don't do it! Don't go in there! Don't open the pod bay doors! Like don't like there's all this stuff." But it creates that element of human error, that human compassion. Like, but they're right there. They need our help. Like it speaks to what actual people would do in a circumstance like that. Because I mean, if you look at a lot of horror films, if you as a basic bro human that you are right now, if you were to actually experience some of the stuff that these characters witness in film, you would literally go insane. Your brain would stop computing what was happening to you.
Crappy pants.
So when you see a movie like Alien, it's like it's almost a calculation of what would actually happen if real life humans were to go up against something like that.
And that brings up something interesting too, because some audience members sometimes say, "That's so dumb. I never would have done that. I wouldn't have done." It's like, have you ever been in a situation where it's like you got a fight or flight and you just freeze?
Exactly.
Like that's like probably most of us.
Like when you're driving down the highway in the mountains and a deer runs out in front of your car, and you know that you might hit it if you don't slam on your brakes or you don't swerve out of the way in one direction or the other. More often than not, I personally completely freeze because I don't know what to do. So the only reaction that I have time to make is to slam on the brakes. That exact same that principle applies in situations like this. When your fight or flight instinct is going, and literally one wrong step means certain death. Your brain operates in completely differently. Like under certain circumstances, you might collapse. You might actually pass out because you can't handle what's happening.
Yeah, and I think too this brings up another kind of good connection, because we were talking about cosmic horror, but I think Alien is actually a very good cosmic horror movie. I may have to dial back my previous statements, because Al points out that, like, yeah, you cannot kill the alien. And on top of that, there was something else I wanted to bring up, but I didn't know if it quite fit. But there are some very unique elements in Alien in particular, which is birth trauma. And it's this idea that being born is one of the most traumatic experiences you can have in your entire life. And it oddly connects to 2001: Space Odyssey, because it sort of ends with humankind learning how to live in space. Whereas before, like their journey to Jupiter or whatever, it's like hostile, totally inhospitable. But same thing with Alien, basically. I find it very interesting that it's humanity out in the cold dead of space, that in the environment is not only totally alien and inhospitable, but there's also hostile alien life on this planet. But then I also find it interesting that even the ship is seemingly, it's like hard edges. It's not warm. It's not, you wouldn't want to, it's like a dank ass factory.
It's like a prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the one exception to that is the command center room.
Like the dining room where they all eat?
Not the dining room. The room where Ash, I think it's where Ash tries to kill Ripley with the magazine.
Oh, yeah.
And what is the main computer called? They go into that chamber to interface with the main computer, and the computer's name is Mother.
Yeah.
And I found that very interesting. I don't know what to make of that, but it's some very interesting food for thought.
Yeah, again, Kubrick makes films for humans.
Okay, good. But I wanted to talk. So this was Ridley Scott, though.
Oh, no. Sorry. but look at them. Well, okay, so that's the thing. See, I always get them mixed up because of how like similar they must have been, like secret lovers or something.
Secret lovers,
or maybe public lovers. I don't know, but
public lovers.
Their films are so. Like they're like cousins. Like they have so many tangents that I often just they're the same person, and they share the same consciousness. And
I might get some flack for this, but I think Christopher Nolan is the kind of person who wants to be like Stanley Kubrick, and he did a good job, because I actually really liked Interstellar.
Yeah,
but the Batman trilogy, I feel has not aged well for me personally. I used to kind of like him, but now I really don't care for his Batman trilogy.
I didn't care about the first Batman movie that he made. The Dark Knight Rises was good, and then Bane was like, nah, like it was fine. But Interstellar is definitely his
that movie is great.
Crowning achievement thus far, I think.
Do you have any thoughts on Event Horizon?
I've never seen it. Yes, I have. No, I don't. Do you have any thoughts on it?
The only thoughts I had on it was it's kind of similar to Alien with what we were talking about. But the one thing that I thought was interesting too is the religious imagery in that movie. Because if you notice the inside of the ship that they investigate, a lot of it looks like a dark cathedral. And in the shots of the previous space team where they're all being tortured and stuff, they're like chanting Latin and whatnot. I don't know what to make of that, but I thought it was worth bringing up. And I think even the ship is shaped like a crucifix.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to make of that, but it's interesting. Onto The Ring, which is one that I know you definitely have a lot to say about.
The Ring was special for me because when that movie was released, I think it was 2002
or
yeah, something like that. So I was still a young man, right? Probably like 12 or something. The scene in which what's her name? Simone? Is that
Timon and Pumbaa?
No, what's her name?
Samara.
Samara, that's it.
It is 2002.
The moment where the guy is watching the TV at the end and she crawls out of the well, or when the hand comes out of the well, I closed my eyes as a kid and it didn't matter because my imagination knew exactly what was happening. Like I could still see the screen in my mind as she crawled towards it. And for me, I think that was the first time I was actually afraid of what I was seeing on television. Like I had been to, like dinosaur museums with my dad, and like the T-Rex would scare me because they did those animatronic dinosaurs. Remember that stuff? That was weird. I thought the dinosaurs were real, and that's one thing. But to be watching something on a flat, just an image on a screen, and think that it is somehow possible, because back then I thought movies were real. I was like, this is amazing. There's so much magic in the world. Like that
Harry Potter.
Like Harry Potter is the coolest thing ever. Like there was still like, I don't even know if I had learned about Santa Claus and that whole thing yet. Like my mind could see her crawl out of the well, and that was the first time I was so terrified. I didn't sleep forever, and I think that's why I got hooked on horror films, because I'd never been moved so much by what I was watching on television. And it's the same thing. It's a monster that kills people, but I think one of the tools that directors use is the killer that cannot be killed is more effective, I think, because Mike Myers.
Michael Myers.
Yeah. No, it's Mike
Myers.
Yeah, baby. In Austin Powers, he can't be stopped. No, but so Michael Myers, he dies so many times in those films.
He dies.
But he always comes back.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him scary, because there is this malicious force that cannot be explained that is going to kill you. And I think that's what's scary. And then they always have these little sprinklings of this unstoppable force. Like in 7 days, period, you're going to die.
And it's more like you were saying. It's more of a pure connection with that. This person represents the inevitability of death.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and the Ring is almost like watching Romeo and Juliet. You watch. At the very beginning of Romeo and Juliet, they say these two people are going to die. And it's like, oh, that sucks. And then you basically just have to watch how they get there. Like the little kid watches the tape. And it's set in stone by that point, because you've already seen within the first 15 minutes of the film how effective the whole, like, her coming out of the TV and killing you, because those two girls die. Or the one girl dies. At the beginning of the film. And so it really is just that whole what can you do, and you're rooting for the characters, and especially because it's a little boy, right? Like it kind of it is a reflection of like the inevitability of death,
Mhm.
because it's even going to come for this kid.
And there's
you
always
know?
something especially tragic about somebody innocent. Even in
Mhm.
real life, when a kid dies in a car wreck or something, it's like, wow, doubly tragic.
Right. So I think that it's those like that triad of elements that makes The Ring so effective.
Mhm.
The first part is that there is this unstoppable force that's going to kill you. It's going to kill you in 7 days. And there's this little boy. But I think the most tragic part is that Samara is also a little girl. And, you learn her story. There's like two parallel stories that happen. You learn about, the mom and her son that are going to perish in this terrible, terrible way because she's seen the tape too.
Yeah.
And then you learn that Samara was basically the Antichrist.
Yeah.
Or became the Antichrist. And she basically like murdered all the horses on her, her dad's ranch, and all. She like made people kill themselves like her whole life and stuff like that. But I think the most evil part of the film is when the mother and her son make a copy of the film and they give it to someone else, because it speaks on like the sometimes evil nature of humans.
To preserve yourself at any cost.
Exactly.
Have you seen It Follows?
Mhm.
Because I noticed that too. I'm like, it's kind of the same thing. It's like you have to pass on this horrible thing
The
in
curse,
order to
basically.
preserve yourself. Yeah.
It's a pure evil film. I think it speaks on so many levels of unstoppable evil. And there's not a single happy moment in that film. Like some horror films, they'll let off and they'll have like a melancholy or sometimes
Mhm.
even a slightly joyful moment. That movie has nothing. It is nothing but pale colors, nothing but pale, awful music, and then everyone dies.
Yeah, it just continually gets worse.
Yep. My favorite part is when the good guy dies. The guy that is actually looking out for the son and her mom, he dies. Straight
I
up,
felt
gets
so bad.
murdered. Yep.
You're talking about the guy at the end, right?
Yeah, when she comes out of the
that was
TV.
so horrible.
Yep. No one wins. Everyone dies.
That was the first movie, because like I grew up with The Thing and The Exorcist and all of these older movies, but The Ring was the first like new movie that came out that scared the heebie-jeebies out of me. So, and it really holds up today still. Errol does not like It Follows. I understand why people don't like It Follows, but I still love it. The soundtrack is really good, and as a premise, I think it's very unique. I understand. I totally get why people don't like It Follows, but for me, it's a.
That movie's a 10 out of 10 for me.
I love it.
I remember, and it doesn't matter. Like, all I know is after I watched that film, I would look over my shoulder, and that proves how effective it is.
Yeah.
Like whether or not you liked the film, it doesn't change how well it did. If there's something that I can see on a screen that compels me to take a physical action in real life, then it's doing something. It's probably doing a lot more under the hood that I'm like not even aware of.
Mhm.
But films that do that, like after I watched Paranormal Activity, I had the exact same thing. I was standing with my friend Sergey on his driveway, waiting for him to get something out of the car, and I sat there and I just turned around in circles because I thought something was going to kill me. Like I was so terrified of that movie for whatever
That
reason.
too. I watched that movie with headphones on. Horrible mistake.
Oh man, I watched. So we saw it in theaters, and there's like whenever the scary stuff happens, there's like this bass frequency, and they just you can tell that they just like put a huge ramp on it, and it goes like all the way up to like +6 dB, and it's just it like vibrates the entire theater, and it's like that. It's just like this energy that could like smack the crap out of you at any moment.
Mhm.
If any sound occurs in that scene, it's gonna like basically bust your eardrums because it's so loud. I think it was they did such a good job with anticipation or building anticipation.
Yeah, and like you said before too, it's like you never actually see the ghost,
Yeah.
and so much of it is played as the reactions or, yeah. I lost my thought.
Yeah. Yeah, it was another good thing or skillful thing that they did was actually the lack of intention. Well, maybe not intention. I don't know what I'd call it, but there's hardly any camera moves in Paranormal Activity because it's mostly security footage,
Yeah.
right?
See, and the thing about Go on.
So they force you to look at something, and they've carefully, like, I mean, it's found footage, but they have carefully placed each object in each camera angle. And so it draws attention. They leave space. They leave negative space in so many of the shots on purpose because there's supposed to be something there. You are supposed to be seeing something, and your brain knows that because it feels wrong. And so the entire time you're watching this film, every single shot is telling you there is something coming. There is something supposed to be there. In fact, there is something there. And so when you finally like get the big like reveal that this thing is invisible and it just like shoves this dude's head up into the ceiling, it's like it's been building to that for the last hour and 15 minutes, basically.
It's painful.
Exactly.
Some of those because you know something is coming, and it does, but it's never like bleh.
Right.
It's always something.
It does at the very last second.
Yeah,
film.
and that's fine.
like, yeah, whatever.
Because that's when
home.
you need that release of tension.
You need, yeah, you can roll the credits. But yeah, the Paranormal Activity, they did something amazing with the first film, and then they basically just did victory laps.
That's why I haven't seen any of the other Paranormal Activities.
I've seen them, and they are scary. Like, to their credit, they are scary, but they're not as like groundbreaking. Like they don't impact me as much as the first one did, because it's more of the same. Like, it's still the same thing, and they try and add like this backstory of like, oh, it was a cult and all this stuff that no one cares about.
But then you fall into the mistake of trying to explain too much, and it's not scary.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care. Like, I don't care where this thing came from.
Yeah, and the thing too is like none of us really have experiences with, oh man, like a cult, and it was terrible.
Yeah, like, because I know so much about the cult, right?
Yeah.
Like, or the occult.
But all of us have had personally or know somebody personally who has had some kind of supernatural experience. So that's much more relatable. Last thing on this one, but
sorry, I was just reading Zach's comments. I actually remember this. He said, I saw Paranormal Activity with Austin in the theater, and when the Ouija board moved on its own, Austin said out loud, I'm going to pee my pants. I really did, because I didn't understand how visual effects work. Like, I didn't know that there was a string and they rotoscoped it out or stuff like that. I thought it was real. Like, there's a part of your brain that believes what you're seeing is real. And I think, and I had never seen anything like that happen on screen with such a crappy looking camera, right? So it's just like, it is real. That's real. I'm going to pee right here in this theater.
I'm going to pee right here, and I'm going to finish the movie. Excuse the smell.
Yeah.
Last thing on this kind of movies. Have you ever seen The Innkeepers?
Yeah, I watched it with you.
Okay. What did you think of that?
That's fine.
I really liked it. There's two we disagree on.
That one's like a...
Well, he doesn't hate it.
That's like a C. It's like a C. It's like a... Yeah.
I don't know, man. I watched that one. That's another one I watched with my headphones on. And just the subtle way that they...
Watching horror movies on headphones is a bad idea.
Thoughts on The Thing?
Thoughts on The Thing. That's one of the most beautiful films ever made.
Oh, I love it. That's number one for me.
Yeah, moving on. No. So I think what's awesome about The Thing is it's another one of those situations where it's what would humans do. It is a little bit more dramatized, I think, but, you know, with the use of dialogue and everything, the way they act towards one another. It's like, this is a film made in a older era. You know, that was the expectation. So, but even then, it really is, how would you react? Because, I mean, me and John played this game. It's called Who Goes There? And it's basically, it's like a rebirth of The Thing. In the game, like, you have to have a bunkmate, and there's the risk of being infected. And when you're infected, you have to like infect other people. It's just like, it's The Thing, but it's a board game. And the heinous crimes and betrayal that comes out in that game I think it actually speaks on exactly how real people would react in a situation like that, where if there's this thing that can completely and perfectly not manipulate, imitate you, what would you do? You know, and I think what's the only disconnect there is that the characters don't exactly do that. They like, I don't even know how to describe the way that they act towards one another. It's like they are perpetuating the plot. I mean, it's a movie, but they're not exactly human. They're like the annotation of a human in the way that they react to something. Like, they are overtly
playing a part.
Yeah, they are overtly in one attitude or whatever towards the situation, which I think is it's kind of like, I mean, that's art, right? They represent a certain aspect of humanity, right? In the way that
that's an interesting way to look at it.
yeah.
Connecting it back to The Shining, something I think that's very striking about The Thing in particular, because like when Jack turns around and he realizes he's holding this decrepit, rotting old hag, it's like, okay, so there's a fear. I think what makes that scary is the revulsion with something dead and rotting. But to take it a step further, and also the scary thing about like sexual abuse. And it's like, well, there's a lot of things that are terrible and awful about sexual abuse, but one thing to connect it to The Thing is, forgive me, but like the fear of being like physically violated.
Mm-hmm.
And The Thing is all about physical violation. When Bennings is being assimilated, he's got tentacle things going into his mouth and wrapped all around him. And when it assimilates you, it rips through your clothing and it penetrates you and it gets in all of your orifices. So it is like a rape. It is literally like a rape when you're being assimilated by the Thing.
Right.
So
can you imagine? I think it's impossible to imagine what it would feel like to be assimilated, to have for example, your jaw like being ripped out of its sockets while you are still conscious about it, like that kind of like it's rape, it's torture, it's like everything. I mean, and that's why I feel like that's probably why I did so well back in the day, because movies that did stuff like that, it had never been done before. And if it had, not as well. So like, for example, I remember my dad telling me to never, under any circumstances, watch The Exorcist, because when he saw it, he remembers people actually throwing up in the theaters. There were people that were running out screaming because something like that had never been made before. When I finally saw it with my friends in Curtis's basement, I was underwhelmed. It was like, yes, that's messed up, but it's not like I need to see a therapist, or like I have suffered a traumatic event. Like it's messed up, and it's pure evil. Like it's another one of those, it doesn't matter what you do, it's still gonna kill you, basically movies. Like it is the devil. But it was a piece. It did that in its time. If you saw something, if The Exorcist was released today and it was directed and filmed and created in the exact same way, I don't know if it would hold up as well as it did when it was first, released, because it basically laid the groundwork of what is unacceptable to see on television.
I think if it was released today, it would do fine.
It'd be okay.
But
like it'd be like, okay.
I think it would still be an amazing movie. But like, point being, I think it was the first horror movie to ever win an Academy Award for like best sound or something. It didn't win best. Maybe it won best picture. I can't remember.
It might have been. No. Yeah, I think it was just that.
I think it was best sound. I adore The Exorcist. I think it is a 10 out of 10 movie for my taste.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that The Exorcist is a bad film. Like it is a 10 out of 10 for what it is. I'm just pointing out that the way that the Thing did its thing with the gross monster thing. It was one of the first of its kind. Like, I mean, I don't know what the lineage of movies like this were released. Like, you had movies like Reanimator. I mean, it's kind of along the same lines, right? Like, it's this creepy monster thing. I wouldn't even be surprised if it was like the same monster designer, whatever you call it, the person who designed the creatures,
creature artist,
or just movies like that in general. I think The Thing just so happened to have an amazing writer and director.
Are you aware of the history of The Thing at all?
No.
Okay, so it's interesting. I don't know if you said this, but did you say that like when it came? Well, when The Thing came out, everybody hated it.
Oh, good.
People hated The Thing when it came out. They thought it was the reaction was almost universally negative. And part of this, I suspect, is because I don't think anything like this had really been done before. But on top of that, it came out the same month as E.T. So everybody was like, no, aliens are cute and lovable. And then there's John Carpenter like,
E.T. is a terrifying film.
E.T. actually scared the crap out of me
Me
when
too.
I was a kid.
I thought E.T. was a monster. He was not a friend of mine.
And when I say it now, I laugh. But like when they do the panning shot or whatever, and E.T. is in the middle of the stuffed animals, that scared the crap out of me. Oh my gosh! And when he lays the Reese's Pieces up to his room, or no, when he's sitting on the chair outside, and he's like. Oh, that scared the crap out of me when I was a kid.
Dude, E.T. is the most disgusting puppet ever constructed.
He looks so sick.
He's a giant booger, basically.
He's a giant booger.
Zach is right. We watched it in his basement. I have these. We spent so much time in Curtis's basement. The only time I ever spent in Zach's basement was when I was trying to just fall asleep in his bed and legit not leave.
I want to hang out with Zach again.
I think Zach still does exist. I think he's real.
He's here now, but
maybe.
I mean that could be an algorithm.
Sure. Yeah,
I don't know.
It could be. Moving on.
Have you seen Deep Red?
Nope.
I have not. I've heard good things, and this is actually like the second or third time that Steve Taylor has recommended it to me. I think it's by the same guy who did Tusk, Kevin Smith.
Oh.
I think it's by the same guy. CC Schicksalsjahre einer Kaiserin.
I don't think that exists. I think that it's
fake.
made up.
Get Out.
That was a good movie.
That was a good
Did
movie.
you see it?
Yeah, it was good.
I like the again monster. The monster is them.
Monsters, the white folks.
No. Oh yeah.
Get Out was the Jordan Peele one, right?
Yeah. Dude, Jordan Peele.
White people and monsters.
Filmmaker. I love Key and Peele. They're my favorite comedians. But when Jordan makes films, it's like he gets it. He gets everything that he does. He's so good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Get Out was awesome. I think it's another example of it was a movie that was the first of its kind, right? Like not only are all the white people in the movie completely and totally racist, which is something that you actually see a ton of in Key and Peele skits. Like there is a commentary on racism all the time, and they try and present it in a funny way so that it becomes like the stupid thing to be racist. Like they're so smart about it. And so with Get Out, it was another thing where it's like this thing, it doesn't kill you, it just traps you forever
and takes your identity.
Exactly.
And so here's the thing too, is like there's a lot of stuff in that's racial that I don't think I could ever like understand as a white person. And so I feel like, I mean, white people can absolutely enjoy it, but I think especially Black people, like Black Americans, would resonate with that because, like you said, like this is an experience that is pretty unanimous with Black folks, I guess.
And I think what was most scary about that film was it doesn't kill you, but what are you without your identity? What are you if you are trapped behind your consciousness? Like, isn't that basically death? The only difference is you watch it
wish
like a movie
for it.
Yeah. And I mean, you can see it. One of the characters, I think it's is she like a maid or something in the movie? When like her eyes start like shaking because it's like you can tell that she's trying that is good acting.
Yes,
by the way,
I remember that.
To believe that you like to I don't even know how you could do that, but like you can see her real self like right there at the edge or whatever. It's that's another. I mean that is maybe that is an anomaly in my theory for fear is just a reaction to death. Because no one ever dies in that film until the very end because of
and it's so satisfying.
Bullets, yeah. So and you're not afraid of those deaths either.
Yeah.
So I think that movie might serve as an alternative to typical fear.
I think too, the idea of being an alien, essentially, of being like a stranger in a strange land. What is it? The Stepford Wives is kind of a similar thing where it's like you come into this foreign world and you're tolerated or you're not welcome but you're only welcome through like a polite smile
Mhm.
because they have plans for you.
Exactly.
That
You're a cash crop.
yeah, something like that.
Literally. Yeah.
Tell me about how horrifying Basket Case was.
I have not seen Basket
Yes,
Case.
you have.
Okay. It was so terrifying, guys.
No, it's the one with the
What? Oh, that is a Goosebumps film. That's such a stupid movie.
oh my
I
goodness.
hate movies like that. I can't believe I sat through the whole thing. I probably fell asleep halfway through. I remember watching that. It's
It was
dumb.
really good.
It's stupid.
I watched whoever did Basket Case. We all watched Basket Case, and it's a movie.
It is
But-
definitely a movie.
There are scenes in that movie that are funny, but as a movie, it's a kind of a chore to sit through.
The scariest part of that film is that you can never get that time back. Like,
Speaking of a fear of death,
yeah, like
you're an hour and a half closer now.
that's the price you pay to sit through garbage like that. They should be in prison for what they do with movies like that.
He did tour 3 other movies. What was the other one called? Hold on, let me look it up just because I'm curious because it's an interesting movie.
It's awful.
It is not a good movie, and the movie I'm going to talk about is not.
It got a 6.2. Get out of
Well,
here.
that's IMDb.
Ugh.
I don't trust anybody's reviews. Rotten
That movie is
Tomatoes.
worse than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I enjoyed
That thing is like
Chainsaw
watching
Massacre.
some like late night Nickelodeon special that aired once. It's like the Star Wars Christmas special. It is so bad. No.
Who directed this? Well, anyway,
Who put that on the list? You should ban them from the. No, I'm just kidding.
crap. Well, there's another movie he did about this worm that latches on.
Is it Tremors with Kevin Bacon?
Tremors with Kevin
That's a
Bacon.
scary film.
Well, it must have been a really good movie if I can't remember what it's called, but it's interesting because this worm like attaches itself to the back of your head and it gets you addicted to the drug that he pumps into you, but he's also like feeding off of you.
That sounds fair.
And he forms like a partnership with this guy. He's a really smart guy, this worm. And I just remember one of the scenes was the guy, when he's all hopped up on this drug that he secretes when he feasts on his brain, he goes to like do things with a prostitute.
I can feel my brain
And
just
the
like
pros-
turning into liquid.
And the prostitute goes to give him a BJ, but
Naturally.
when she opens up the zipper, the worm goes out of his zipper and into her mouth and eats her brains from the inside. And that was something I had never seen before. Anyways,
yeah.
Anyways.
I just saw that Sergey put Dead Girl in here. Of course you put that movie in here. I remember watching that with Sergey.
oh, Puppet Master. Have you seen Puppet Master?
No, I have
Yeah,
not.
me neither.
Okay. It was- yeah.
The only thing I can say on that is the girl puppet. I've seen the scene where she burps out these leeches onto the guy's chest and the leeches eat him alive or something. Just that fear of being eaten alive. I think that is a primal sort of fear. The movie Hush.
I have not seen it. I think I might have. If you can pull up a screenshot of it or something,
Hush
I might
is-
remember.
I had every reason to believe that Hush would suck, just based on what it looked like as a. It's a movie about a deaf girl trying to outsmart. No, this isn't it.
Why would you do that?
If you have not seen, it's a movie about a deaf girl
Okay.
having this extended sort of face-off with a serial killer.
No. I don't think
Okay,
I've seen
I will not. All I have to say is the premise, which isn't giving anything away. It's about a deaf girl trying to deal with a killer. And speaking of like all ever more inventive ways and like, give me the same thing but different. It's like Hush, based on the way it looked, the way it was marketed. It was like, yes, it was actually really damn good. As far as I'm going to stab you movies go. So I'd recommend Hush. Let's catch up on.
Midsummer. Oh,
M4 Media says the sounds that aliens made in War of the Worlds scared me for the first time for sure. I really liked War of the Worlds.
The sound design in War of the Worlds was, I feel like, one of the best contributing factors to it. Like, if you don't have good sound design in a film, it just it flops, right? Like, you have to be immersed in the film to believe it.
I correct myself. The first half of War of the Worlds,
because you don't know what's happening.
Really good.
It's the unknown. See, it's the unknown that drives that, like, the things that you don't talk about, the things you don't see. They do it on purpose to drive you to the rest of the movie that you hate, but you say, it was worth $8, I guess.
Yeah. Jill says the worm movie is called Brain Damage. Now I remember. That was kind of a fun movie.
I'll be sure to block that on Netflix if I can.
Okay, so Midsommar. This is a big one because I know you had thoughts on this and I had thoughts on this.
So I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who's watching, because here's my take on the film. It is a 10 out of 10. It is a perfect movie. And there is a line that I feel like directors should never cross. And not necessarily that shouldn't be crossed, but crossed in the way that they did in that movie, because they take subtopics like suicide and homicide and drug use and drug abuse and depression and mental instability, and they drive it up the wall. Like the intention of that film is to damage you, is to hurt you and make such a terrible, awful change in your psyche that I feel like they are trying to kill you. The director wants you to commit suicide because you feel so bad about life after watching a movie like that. I remember when I saw it with Sarah in the theaters, we felt so bad. Like we had just seen something that we weren't supposed to, like something that we can't unsee and something that we can't unlearn. Like, people make those jokes and memes and stuff like, I can't unsee that. But it's like, I feel like that movie for me was, I wish I could forget it. And it was a perfect film. Like they did, I feel like he accomplished exactly what he meant to do. I feel like Hereditary was a sketch of Midsommar. Like he was still trying to mess with people. And Midsommar is exactly what he set out to do with Hereditary, and he just got out all the kinks in the middle of it. And I hate that movie, and I can't believe he made that movie.
I see what you're saying, because like even Hereditary, the way that death is handled in that movie is just very real.
Yeah,
it's real in a way that feels super relatable. Even though I don't know anybody who's ever been decapitated by putting their head out of a car window, the way that, speaking of reactions and stuff, like the way that people act in that movie, I feel is totally just real. I don't love the movie Hereditary, but I see so much in there that is like really on the right path.
Exactly. Like there was this idea that he had, and you knew where he was headed. It just didn't quite hit the mark. And like I say Hail Payment as a joke because I think that whole thing is just stupid. But
yeah,
Midsommar, everything in it was done with great intention, and it delivers every single time. And I have to give him credit for that. But at the same time, it's like I want my time back. I want my money back. I want everything back that I had to spend to watch that movie, because it was just so tasteless in the way that he drove it. It's like it's the same feeling that I get after watching too much Tim and Eric. It's like this. He's like an absurdist nihilist kind of person that makes you feel like nothing matters. It's like that feeling. Like
feel dirty.
Exactly, you feel dirty after watching, because he talks about, like, they touch on suicide, drug abuse, relationships, cheating on the people that you're supposed to be devoted to. Like it covers every single terrible thing that a human can do without any retribution of any kind. It's like, it's literally only at the very end that you feel some semblance of, oh, I see. And I know that it's been attributed to what a breakup feels like.
Yeah.
But okay, but you know how many other infinite ways that he could have communicated that?
That was the thing, because I'm going to go ahead and say spoiler alert. So if you've not seen Midsommar, and a year or two that it's been out, and you want to keep spoiler free, then leave now. But the I forget the main character's name, but the way that her sister and her parents go, it's again, like with Hereditary, it's handled in a way that is just that's real.
Yeah.
And like you have said before, it's like, could you not have done something similar that did not, like, was it necessary to go that real, you know?
Yeah.
One thing that you touched on too that I thought was very interesting is everybody who dies in Midsommar didn't need to die. Nobody who died in that movie needed to die. Even the a-holes, like the guy who peed on the tree, or the guy who tried to steal their holy book's secrets.
Mm-hmm.
None of that was like a capital offense. It's not like they raped the mother or something like that. It was like, oh, that was a terrible thing to do. We should put you in prison, or we should give you a beating. But to kill you or to flay you alive and have your lungs hanging out and stuff, like,
oh, dude. I mean, like,
nobody needed to die in that movie.
yeah, where they kill you, they disembowel you and stuff you with straw. It's like, yeah, that's messed up. But it's like they do it with such like hatred towards the viewer. It's like it's made to intentionally upset you, and not to tell a story, and not to create a world, and not to create exposition. It's literally just to mess with your head. And I feel like, yeah, that's what art is, right? It serves a purpose to compel others to think or act in a certain way, that like it speaks to a different part of you. And this piece of art wants you to die. And I hate that movie so much.
Come to think of it, I know the line is, I'm blurring the lines, but I would kind of classify this as a cosmic horror film, at least an existential horror film.
Yeah, for sure.
Something, I'm going to have to do a little bit of groundwork. You've heard the first half of my rant on this, but I've had some time to germinate.
Oh, okay.
So, of course, in Midsommar, you have the main character, and she's going through this horrible thing. The one person who should be there for her boyfriend, is only with her because, oh man, he's with her for the wrong reasons. If he breaks up with her, then he's just going to make her feel worse, and he's with her out of duty. So really, she doesn't have, and her family's gone. She has nobody who is giving her the role that she should have. And so what comes in to fulfill that role? It's basically a religion, a tradition, and a community. And I thought it was kind of interesting because this movie pits contemporary atheist, for lack of a better way to put it, just secular people, modern people, and it brings them back into a traditional kind of setting with a traditional religion, worldview, and actual like lowercase t tradition. It immerses them in something that is authentically and 100% human, and which I think we do need as a people. And I think it's interesting because these people come into this community and they're met with all of these things which are really authentically human, and which we as a culture, I think, have lost touch with. But because we're talking about what makes horror movies scary, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here, comparing the modern world to the traditional world. But I do find it interesting as far as the scariness goes. You remember, and I think you brought this up too, but you remember the two people who are chosen to be sacrificed in the very end. They give them feel no pain, feel no fear.
That's pure
and then
evil.
And then at the end, the one guy is like, he's feeling fear, and he looks over, and the one guy, he's like, whoa! And he starts going on fire. So it's like they lied to them.
Yep.
And so that's the scary thing for me as somebody who has a strong drive toward religion, tradition, the otherworldly. There's always that goblin in the back of your head that is full of doubt. And so it's like, however useful and however enriching and useful and wholesome this community is, if ultimately they're telling you lies, that's a scary thing. That's a scary thing. It's something I think that doesn't register on like the first viewing, or I don't know. It takes thinking to get there, but I think it's very real.
And
anyways.
I agree. And I think that those like people who can't see that or are oblivious to it, the movie's not made for those kinds of people. I think that kind of movie, it calls on a more vulnerable side of you, and if you have not like worked to know that part of yourself, then you'll think that Midsummer is stupid, and you'll think that like all of it is kind of just pointless or whatever. But it really is a malicious piece of content, and I hate it. But to its credit, it's a really good movie.
I almost want to put like a picture of you in front of the Midsommar poster and say, it really is a malicious piece of content, period. I hate it, period.
Put that really, on the IMDb.
It really is a malicious piece of content.
The New York Times.
I hate it.
I've never felt so endangered by watching a movie, and I've seen some weird stuff. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say on it.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend it to anyone.
Be careful.
Yeah.
Have you seen The Descent?
Yes.
All right. Fear of being eaten alive. That's very primal. And fear of being lost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think most of it was the claustrophobia that accompanies it, because even though they're like okay, just so you guys know, they're on a set. It's not real. But some of those shots, they did put them in like some tunnel systems, but for the most part, that's set design. But they use camera angles so well that you as a viewer, like your chest gets tight watching a film like that. And it's so like sporadic in the way that they'll like pitch the camera to different angles or on different characters, but it's always like you're in this like closed space, like the whole film. Like when she finally breaks out of the surface, spoiler alert, you take a breath, because it's the first, or
since they got down.
Yeah. It's the first and last time that there is any open space whatsoever. Because even in the cavernous parts of the cave that they're in, it's pitch black. Mm-hmm. So even though it's like open or whatever, the light that is created, like the composition is still the characters with a simple orb around them. Like they are still enclosed in something. As far as the image on the screen goes. So I think one of the best parts of that is how cramped the movie makes you feel. And I feel like, like there's a monster and then you die and all that stuff. And then that's scary. But I think it being trapped, I feel like adds that layer of fear, because, if you could get away from a creature like that, it's like, oh yeah, that's scary. But like,
get in the car.
Yeah, get in the car and drive away. But when there's literally, miles of rock separating you from freedom, I think that movie was really effective.
I mean, like kind of like Vertigo by Hitchcock. It's like with that movie, you end up fearing heights, and with this, you end up fearing this. It psychologically makes you claustrophobic, and I don't know. I think back to like when we were more active trying to do short films and stuff. Like when we did the horror movie film festival. Do you remember how many really good films there were in that?
At least zero.
But it's like anybody can make jump scares. Anybody can make spooky kind of, settings and stuff. But
I don't even call them jump scares. It's just being startled.
Yeah, startled.
There's nothing scary about it.
But I treat horror in the same way that I treat comedy, because if you watch a comedy movie with somebody and they're just like, and if you watch a horror movie with somebody who's like, it totally takes you out.
Yeah,
it's a group. I mean,
it's like going to a haunted house.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Yep.
Night of the Living Dead, the 68 or 1990 version.
I don't care. That's Goosebumps, dude. I don't care for movies like that.
We're on the bottom rung of the ladder, so to speak. I think Night of the Living Dead is groundbreaking. I don't think it's scary. I think it's fun. I think the 1990 version is even more fun because they really embrace the karate kicks and stuff. But I put Night of the Living Dead, the movie, in the same box as something, for example, like Child's Play. I love the Child's Play series. I love it. That's my favorite horror franchise, just because the first one was like, we're going to try to make you scared.
They're going to try.
And it does a good job. But yeah. But then from moving forward in the Child's Play franchise, it's like, no, Chucky's fun. He's sadistic. He's entertaining. Like, I love Child's Play. It's so much fun to watch. The creativity. And so, yeah, it's a horror franchise that's not really scary.
Child's Play. So Child's Play was another example of, like, there was this world in my mind that had been created because I remember being at Albertsons in the video rental section, and I would sneak off to
love those memories.
To sneak off and look at the rated R movies.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I could never get them, but I would look at the back of the cover, like, this is rated R. Like, this is
so
this
scary.
is the bleeding edge of what can be allowed for humans to see, right? It was like the worst thing imaginable for a child. So when I saw, like, there's this doll that can kill you or whatever, I thought, like, that's insane. I play with toys. Like, I can't think of anything worse. So when I finally saw Child's Play, well, I was in my 20s. First of all, I waited that long. That underlying narrative was always there. It was still like there's a reason why this was, given the cult following that it was. And then I found out why, because it's so stupid. It's like,
he's a voodoo doll.
He's a voodoo doll. Well, as soon as they started, like, talking about voodoo, I was like, this isn't even worth the popcorn that I made to watch this movie.
The thing is, Child's Play is scary until that first time where he actually, like, the gloves are off and he's like, I'll kill you, you stupid bitch. Like, I'm like, okay, this went from trying to be scary to, like, this is fun. Like, you have Brad Dourif playing a killer doll. It's just fun.
The only reason I even saw the most recent film was because Mark Hamill was the voice of
You saw
it? Yeah.
It was good.
And I love the way that Mark Hamill sounds. Like, I love his Joker character. He's awesome. And that was the only reason. I still thought it was dumb. But at the same time, it still belongs in the original classic slasher Halloween films. Like, it's still Nightmare on Elm Street. It's still Halloween. It's still, like, all that stuff. I respect it for what it is, and I do not like it. 10 out of 10.
We have to watch Bride of Chucky.
I've seen them all. I've seen
them
all. I've seen them all.
Because, like, you have Pippin Took.
As soon as they started,
Peregrine Took
playing
a Seed of Chucky. That's it, Peregrine Took, and he's like this genderqueer. He comes out, and him and his wife Tiffany have to find a way to come to terms with their voodoo possessed doll son.
Yeah, like it's like they try and inject, like, these real life, like, things that happen between couples and stuff, and, like, in identity and stuff. But then there's this voodoo doll that looks like a character that you would see on a McDonald's wall.
Oh.
Like, he looks like the Hamburglar.
Oh, I love it. Have you ever seen Wrong Turn?
No.
I
imagine
it's good.
Someone,
makes a wrong turn. The premise is,
and it lasts about an hour and a half.
Elevator pitch. Okay. Elevator pitch. All right. Bear with me. A group of teenagers takes a wrong turn. Uh-oh. They get a flat tire because they went down this wrong turn. Guess what? Cannibal Hillbillies.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's the movie.
Is that the log line? Like, a couple of teenagers make a wrong turn, period. Uh-oh, in all caps.
I want to make that movie poster now. Uh-oh. Have you seen The House is October Built?
Nope. It sounds familiar, though.
The one thing I'll say about Wrong Turn is the fear of being hunted, because we do the hunting, we do the butchering, we do the killing. When you're on the other end of that cattle prod, it's a different story.
Man. Okay, are we there yet? Nightmare on Elm Street?
Nightmare on Elm Street.
It's not scary.
It's not scary, but it's fun. Yeah. It's kind of like Child's Play. It's creative and fun.
It's like going through a haunted house in the 90s.
But yeah, I mean, like we talked about in The Shining originally, it's like the idea that, ooh, now your dreams aren't even safe.
I mean, it might. I mean, yeah, exactly. It was paving the. It was an original idea, and it scared the generation that it was made for. Like, it was a first unknown. Like, oh, maybe there are more ways to die than I imagined, or whatever. It's the same idea, but I guess it's lost on our generation because by the time we were old enough to even watch a movie like that, or did it in secret, it was just it didn't have its impact. You know, so I think there also is something to be said about generational films like that.
Yeah.
You know, like The Shining. The Shining is scary, and it doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are. It's
I think
amazing, right?
And to go back to The Exorcist too, because The Exorcist is sometimes painted as the most terrifying movie of all time, and I don't doubt that. For
It absolutely was.
Yeah. But now I think people are disappointed when they're told The Exorcist is the most horrifying movie of all time. If I were to tell somebody, you should really watch The Exorcist, it's a really good movie. It's scary, and it's a really good drama dealing with demons.
Yeah.
And because I have a tendency to say, oh, dude, we have to go here. It's the best food you've ever had in your entire life. This is the best cheeseburger you're ever going to have. And then they go with me, and they're like, yeah, it was pretty good. And I'm like, damn it. So
Foiled again.
Dead Girl.
Dead Girl is for horny teenagers that are interested in necrophilia. That's all I have to say on it.
Premise. Okay, elevator pitch. Bear with me here. Okay? Group of teenagers goes looking around where they poking around where they shouldn't be. Uh-oh. Dead girl.
What are you gonna do?
But she's a zombie. She's a zombie dead girl. What are you gonna do? The kids fuck her. What happens in this movie is, the kids
That's
go.
literally it.
That's it.
And it's that for an hour and a half, and then it's over.
The kids go poking around where they shouldn't, and they find this like abandoned sewer room thing where there's a zombie lady like tied up, and they're like, "What should we do with her?" I'm gonna fuck her. And then they just like they come back and they have sex with this zombie girl repeatedly, and then of course one of them is like, "Is what we're doing ethical?"
It is like the quintessential film that stupid horny teenagers would literally watch as an excuse to watch porn together. Like, that's all it is. There's not a single redeeming factor about that film. And I feel ashamed that I've seen it twice, and I watched it twice intentionally, and I did it with malicious intent because I knew how
you wanted to put your friends.
Yeah, I wanted to put my friends through it because it was just. I hope I never see that movie again. I
will say though, again, that sort of going back to The Shining, but that revulsion toward something dead, because normally we get to see death at a distance, but Jack Torrance, he's embracing it. And these teenagers are screwing it. And so if I had anything positive to say about Dead Girl, it would be putting your finger, pun unintended, putting your finger on that sort of subtle, gross thing that we all kind of fear.
I think that movie was literally just trying to cause a ruckus, and it would get a cult following, or lots of people would see and they'd make money. Like, it was literally just a potential cash grab. It was... I feel so bad for the people that were in the making of that film. Like, those actors, you never heard of them ever again, did you?
I forgot. Right? I forgot about the end. Zach says, my favorite part is when the main character turns his crush into a dead girl at the end.
Wow. What a twist.
The girl that he was interested in, or whatever, his crush, she ended up getting bit or something too. And he's like, I'm going to save you. And he just like ties her up in the same place where the other dead girl was tied up, and they have a nice, long, and fruitful relationship.
Think of the audition for that role of the dead girl herself. Like, how do they explain that to you of what you're going to be doing? First of all, you're going to be completely nude, full frontal nudity, and people are going to have sex with your dead body, and you're going to make sounds like, like that's it. Like, that's your whole role. You don't have a single speaking line. This is literally glorified porn.
Trust me, darling, you're going to go far. This is going to be your groundbreaking role.
Her life is ruined because of that film. Just think of that.
Oh, man. I can only imagine it's... No, I don't want to be mean. I hope that she.
I hope she's still alive.
I hope.
I hope that she did something with her life and she was able to put it behind her, and everyone else in that movie and the directors should be in prison.
I hope she has a family with children and a fulfilling job, and she's happy and not nobody she knows is aware of
Because
that movie.
here's the thing. You know for a fact, like it is a public secret that adults were not watching that movie. It was kids, like that. Like there was nothing but underage teenagers watching that movie because they're like, "Oh, dude, did you hear what this movie's about?" Like that movie should be illegal because it's viewer base. What like it was illegal for is it illegal? Would it be illegal for underage people to watch a movie like that? Is that illegal? Because without parental supervision?
I don't know that it would be illegal, but I don't know.
Either way, it's unsuitable for children.
Unsuitable.
And, I was a casualty of its... I don't know how to end this sentence.
Zach says, kid at school. Yeah, well, my mom was dead, girl. Have you seen The Crazies?
No, I don't want to.
It's another like War of the Worlds type thing where the first half is very good at portraying how a small town would deal with basically a zombie infection, but after that, no. Eyes Without a Face?
Nope.
Jacob's Ladder?
Nope.
That's a very good movie with that guy, and it's actually kind of Lovecraftian. It's really good. I'm going to turn the fan on.
It's very humid in
here.
My hair is so frizzy right now because of it.
Let me know if the fan is
that feels so good.
If the fan is affecting the sound quality.
I forgot what air felt like.
We're getting close to the end here. Well, I think we'll go through the last questions.
I do want to say though, we're pretty much at the end of this list, and not a single one of you guys put The Witch in there. The Witch is an amazing film. I feel like we should talk about The Witch.
The Witch.
The Witch.
A baby, spoiler alert, a baby actually gets eaten.
That's the whole log line.
That was, when you find out the baby actually, nope, the witches did eat the baby.
I think the scary thing in The Witch is there is a malicious force. Yes, it's the monster idea. You never see him. And you know what's odd about that film is how well it takes hope away from the characters and the viewer, because it demonstrates witchcraft is real. In fact, there are witches. Like there is not just one witch. There are witches in the woods. They are taking your children. They are eating your children. Like they're mashing them up into gut goulash basically and eating them. Pure evil. Your animals are possessed. Your children are possessed and dying. All this shit happens, right? And it basically blankets out the fact that the devil is not only real, but he is in your home and he is destroying your lives. And I think the most powerful part of that film is the father prays to God all over and over again, and God will not answer him. God will not save him. And I think that's the most evil part of the film, is the fact that it shows that there is this balance between heaven and hell, but there's the absence of God completely. And I think that's the scariest part.
I was just going to say, too, the father is the most interesting character, the one that I remember the most. And what I kind of pieced together here is kind of like The Shining. The father is also, from my recollection, I only saw it once, but the father was the most unlikable person. And he continually comes off as this like hard ass and this religious zealot and this person who's like unlikable, but also he's like right.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
he's the one who actually identifies the threat and is trying to keep the family together. But so it is one of those movies where I just felt I didn't like anybody. But it didn't make any of it any less horrible. It's like watching your dysfunctional neighbors across the street tear each other apart. It's like, yeah, you don't really like them, but seeing them tear each other apart is also, you pity them, you know?
Well, and it's kind of like, the reason why you don't like them is because the devil infects them from the very beginning. Like there's this creeping shadow, and it kind of crawls up each character throughout the whole film. the breaking point for the father is where he's literally crying
Yeah.
in the dark, asking God to save his children, and he doesn't. You know, it's and the next day he dies. Right?
Cosmic horror
Yeah, it's
again.
the inevitable, unstoppable force that you can't see. And I think the scariest part of that film for me is when spoiler alerts. When the goat talks and whispers in the ear of the girl. That is insane. I got chills when that stuff went down. So it's a film that it's another one of those like hopeless films. Like and in a sense, some horror films are, but there's always half and half. I would say there's this resolution in the third act where it's like the characters overcome their fears. Or did they? And then they make
Jason.
or did they? And then they make a second film or whatever. But for this one, it's like, nope.
Everybody sucks.
Everyone
Or
sucks,
dead.
and you're dead, and then the credits roll. Like that, I feel like that's true horror. The unstoppable thing, and there's no lesson to be learned. There's no like you just watch a tragedy happen, and that's it. And I think The Witch is a perfect example of that. From the very beginning.
I kind of want to rewatch that now.
Dude, I love it.
I don't think either of us have seen Devil's Rejects. Fishing Trip, the movie.
Did Brendan put that? Of course he did.
We did a...
that movie changed my life.
It won a Celtex...
oh, dude, yeah, we won $5,000. Okay, yeah, let's actually talk about that. So we were in college, and we made this corny little horror film. It didn't have a single speaking line in it. But Carter Fawcett submitted our script because we wrote the script using Celtex. He submitted it to the finished product. It's like a 10-minute film. I don't even know. He submitted to this contest. We actually won. We won $5,000 towards it. And we actually, I don't remember if we won anything at that short film festival, but it actually sort of paved the way for us, I think, as young creatives, to know that the things that you create like can actually do something for you. Like I don't like that movie. I don't think we did a very good job.
I agree.
But you know what? We did something with it.
Yeah.
Like we made something of ourselves. And I was like, what? I was like 21 or 20 years old, something like that. Like we did a good job. That's pretty good. And I don't want to show it to anyone. So, you know,
I already posted it in the chat.
Yeah, dude. Watch it.
It's really good. Here we go.
I will say though that Mark Gangel did some good VFX.
Oh yeah, there's
He
a
did
lot
good
of
job.
Forgive me, but it falls into what I see so much from like the local Utah film crowd is that it looks amazing.
Yep.
Everything is great about it except the story. The story sucks ass and the plot is just bad and like you're not invested, but it looks amazing.
I mean, the story came out with me and Brendan sitting around a table while we were on break at work. Just like, what can we make that we can submit to this It's Just a Movie film festival? Like, we didn't even think about Celtex. Like, we were just thinking like, oh, what's something that would be relatively easy to think of and execute? And we did. And that's all it is. Like, it's not scary whatsoever. There's a single point. That's not true. There were like 2 13-year-old girls in the movie theater when it was shown.
That's true.
That gasped. And I was like, that's it. I've changed them forever. No. But yeah, it was a learning exercise, I think. And some of those shots are beautiful.
The other movie we did, which Casey brings up, which is Casey says favorite horror movie of mine, premiered at that festival. John directed it, I think. No, Austin directed it. He says where the kid's dad kills his mom and has to explain to the kid why it happened.
Oh, Mom's Dinner.
Have you put that on YouTube?
No.
Why not?
I don't remember.
That really needs to be seen. It's kind of like Cooking with Sammy. It's amazing.
Mom's Dinner. I think I was just mad at my production teacher for making me do something I didn't want to do, and so I just made something that I knew would piss him off.
And he was so pretentious and up his own butt, and I understand he has health problems now, so I feel bad for him. But
he was and I won't name who this teacher was because he is an awesome person, and I don't want to I'm not bashing him by any means. He is from a different generation. He is akin to Steven Spielberg. Like that's his persona. Like he is He is a filmmaker, okay? He's really good at what he does, and he absolutely hated my short film, and I did that, but I made it as well as I could at the time. So I got an A. I passed the class with an A because there was nothing he could do about it, and everyone in the class loved it, and everyone I've shown to it loved it because, like, it was literally just like it was kind of like giving the middle finger to my teacher, and it was, but I didn't know I was doing it at the time
because the class was like directing, wasn't it? And it was like, all right, now what's your character's motivation here? To protect my son from finding out that I cut his mother up into little pieces. Okay.
See, they tried to. So here's the thing. Like, I originally wrote the script as a. That is actually the first scene of what I had made a 45-minute play out of, and eventually a bunch of different characters would come in and out like a sitcom, basically.
And the whole time he's trying to
exactly like the police would come. Like the whole thing goes straight to hell by the end of the movie, and he still gets away with it. But I created it in such a way that it was like, howdy doody, 1942, like, hey, you're my
how you doing, neighbor?
Yeah, like, and I'm a game show host, kind of like that attitude. And so John and Brendan, like, they made us bring them into the classroom and act out certain scenes so that he could direct me or whatever. And he would not buy the whole like game show host attitude behind their dialogue. Like, he's like, you're trying to convince your son that he hid the body in the freezer, but it has to be a secret. You've got to be serious about this. And I was like, no, that is not. And it's in the script, like ecstatically, like every thing, every line would have the way that it was meant to be delivered. Like, and he hated it. So I feel like I did exactly what I set out to do. That's another great example of filmmakers who make something with the intention of a misguided purpose, and my purpose in making that film was to make my teacher mad.
Sometimes when a mommy loves another daddy, then your daddy has to go out and dismember them by the dumpster behind Sears.
Yeah.
I forget. You need to do the world a good solid and put that on YouTube.
It's on Facebook. If you go to my Facebook profile, it's in my videos. You can watch it.
I'll post that eventually, like tomorrow or something. All right, I think we're going to move on into this final. We're going to try to keep. We're at 2 hours 17 minutes. We're going to try to wrap this up in 13 minutes. We'll see if we can do it. We're going to hit the other points in here. The second most voted one. We're going to get a little heavy here. Is anti-theism inherent in atheism? Or does it just depend on the atheist?
Okay, first, let's establish what is the definition of anti-theism.
Somebody who not only does not believe, someone who does not only not ascribe to any theistic views, but who thinks that theism is bad and works against theism or speaks out against theism in the same way that, like, if I speak out against communism, and I think communism is bad, and I'm vocal about it, it's like you might consider me an anti-communist.
Oh, so like that talk show host who made that movie about how religion is ruining the world.
Oh, Bill Maher.
Yeah,
You'd
Bill
be
Maher.
an anti-theist.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, what is the question? Is it in atheism, or
is it inherent in atheism?
No, I don't think so. I think you can be atheist and be a perfectly normal, kind human being, and respect everyone around you. You respect life. You value life. I don't think you're. I don't think you're trying to actively stop a religion of any kind or a belief of any kind just because you're an atheist. You know, just because you're an atheist doesn't make you an asshole. I know plenty of atheists that I love dearly, and I know that feeling is reciprocated. You know, so it's no.
Yeah, I think. Narrowly defined, atheism is simply the rejection of the idea of God or gods or any sort of theistic claims. So I don't think anti-theism is inherent within atheism. Atheism on its own is benign. But yeah, I mean, I think just like you will see poisonous Christians or poisonous Muslims or what have you, I think you'll also find poisonous atheists.
Yeah. I think, and it's interesting because you can be an atheist, and you can lean either way. Same goes for nihilists. You can, which I think is so strange for nihilists to be anti. How would you say it?
Anti-theist.
Yeah, because
Nothing
if
matters.
if they truly believe that, then why are they actively opposing anything to begin with? You know, why don't they just? I'm not going to actually say what I was about to say because that's inhuman, but. Why don't they just take a hike?
Why don't you kill
if
yourself?
they really believe that?
Well, honestly, if you really are a nihilist and you believe that everything is absurd and comes to nothing, then you may as well kill yourself. You may as well kill yourself if the Holocaust means nothing, if your mother being savagely murdered means nothing, if everything means nothing and ultimately all of this suffering is just a fart in the wind, then really, like, nothing is impermissible.
I mean,
ultimately.
I'm not advocating for nihilists to kill themselves. I don't want them to kill themselves.
Me neither.
Like, I'm not saying that.
Bless you.
Suicide is one of the things I hate the most in this world. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's an odd thing that I've seen in people, and I feel like it's they're denying some part of themselves. And they're doing it in a violent way, like they're railing against this other half of them that thinks something else is going on, but they're like, no, it can't possibly be like that. And so they're like a cringy teenager, basically. That's what
I think it was even Nietzsche who said that nihilism cannot be maintained, that it's ultimately a stepping stone to something else. And something I've noticed, and this goes into I made an anti-Nazi post earlier in the week. So this kind of segues into something I've noticed, is that when one goes so far in atheism to become a nihilist, that's untenable. I think it's mentally, emotionally, and I would say spiritually just crushing. It's not sustainable. And so you end up going into astrology, into Eastern religion and philosophy, or into other kinds of non-theistic or pseudo-theistic kind of belief. But what I wanted, do you have anything to say on that before I transition? Okay, because what I noticed is I did some exploring on far-right extremism. I have no problems going into far-left extremism. And besides the critique of capitalism that we did a while ago, I haven't really done much on like fascism or Nazism, and make no mistake, those guys are trash. But the interesting thing I found, like doing more research on like actual neo-Nazis and stuff like that, a lot of them are anti-Christian. A lot of them are atheists. And a lot of them are pagans. And I found that interesting because it seemed my impression based on what I've found out is that they perceive Christianity as weak or laughable or that kind of thing. And they want a return to tradition and that kind of thing. They want some kind of metaphysic, but they can't get it with Christianity, or they don't see Christianity as something respectable. So they go back to paganism.
Yeah. I think ultimately, this is just me, like I could be totally wrong. I think nihilism is just a frustration with one's own existence, and so they rail against it. And I feel for them because, I mean, life is absurd. But on that, I mean, so atheists are actually some of the most beautiful people in the world because they just, I feel like there's two versions of atheists. There are the ones that actively disbelieve in a thing.
Anti-theist.
Yeah, and then there's those who just simply don't subscribe to that train of thought, that in faith period or belief period. It's not a part of their lives. And I think that's why there's this debate in the first place, because when you belong to a faith, when you belong to a religion, or you just have a belief, whether you're agnostic or whatever, having a belief, the absence of that feels so jarring, right? Like it just doesn't compute for some people. So I think it really is just at the base value of theism and atheism is two entities saying that one saying this is reality and the other saying no, this is reality, and that's it. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, but no, I think that answers the question.
Yeah, and one other thing that I don't know, maybe we're going too far off here, but just back to the whole neo-Nazi thing, what I find kind of interesting is that, especially with fascism, it's kind of like communism in that it's all right using religion, it's all right adopting religion so long as it calls the shots, so long as it has the ultimate say in what happens. Basically, it gets down to communism and fascism replace the state. They replace God with the state. And God can exist, but it has to be subservient to the state. Fascism and communism both put everything in a subservient status to the state. And that's why ultimately I feel both communism and fascism are supremely dangerous and unnatural.
Yeah.
And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, but if you want a good book on nihilism, get Nihilism, the Root of the Modern, of the Revolution of the Modern Age by Seraphim Rose. It's a very good book. You can see it's thoroughly bookmarked, but yeah.
Yeah, the Fervent album, Ghost, is actually my, I don't know, battle or phase with nihilism, and I was so mad about it. I was convinced that there was no purpose to anything, and I was mad about it. I was like, I can't believe that's the state of things. Like, and it's basically just, it's like an open note or an open diary of just the collection of my thoughts during that time. Like this is years ago. This is like when I was like 19 years old or something like that. And I was, but it's like, I just can't, it must be, I feel so, I don't want to say, I don't pity nihilists because they're their own agents and they can live life the way they choose to. But I feel like I wish it didn't have to be that way.
Convert them?
No, I don't want to convert them. I don't want to do a damn thing to anyone.
Yeah.
I wish it didn't have to. I wish people didn't have to feel that way. I wish it was bright and beautiful all the time.
I'm actually working on a video about this that's directed to Christians, but it also applies to everybody. And the gist of the video is that nobody is going to see things your way if you're a dick to them. So I say it's a video primarily directed at Christians, but it's basically like, if you want to convert people, like, number one, it's not your place to convert. You don't do any of the converting. If any conversion happens, it's between them and God.
It's internally. Yeah.
But also, conversion that happens as a result of totally being owned or you totally destroyed them, like, that's a conversion that takes place from a wrong mindset.
That's bullying.
It's bullying is what it comes down to. And so the only kind of conversion that can happen, I think, is secondhand. The only kind of conversion that you can affect, I think, is secondhand. And that is if the frequency that you're vibrating on, or if the lifestyle or worldview that you've ascribed to is doing positive things for you, people will notice. But focus on yourself and don't worry about other people. Don't worry about trying to get other people to think your way or do your thing.
Yeah.
So, anyways. Next. Okay. We might fly through these other ones. Taxation is theft.
No, it's not. You don't. Okay, so here's the thing. Let's say that tax is theft. Maybe I even agree with you half the time. Let's say taxation is theft. What's the alternative to taxation? Because if we don't pay taxes, roads don't get built. We don't have libraries. We don't have the post office. We don't we have all of these services that we depend on every single day of our lives. Let's just say that they are completely gone. They have never existed and never will exist unless we do something about it. where would those would it all just be private businesses? Like would construction, like road construction, would that be a private business?
And you'd have to pay tolls.
Right, but how do private businesses get to build roads through through the land, basically, like, because the government has eminent domain over a lot of the stuff, and that's why roads get built where they do. So my thing on it is like, okay, well, so let's say there's no taxes. Well, where do all these things come from then? Is it just relying on the goodness of mankind to like hold each other up? That'd be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's we're describing a utopia when we think about that, but it's like
utopia.
But I don't know what the alternative is. So it's like, maybe it's theft. I don't know, but what are you gonna do without it, right?
We've talked about this before on the Johncast, and yeah, I mean, taxation is theft, but like you said, what other system can we do? And kind of like what we were talking about with horror movies, it's like, at least, I don't know about all people, but at least enough people to make it untenable will not do the right thing when crap hits the fan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, all right, let's eliminate taxes altogether now. I think at a community level, you might be able to make things work, but I don't have faith in our ability as a country to live without taxes. Taxation is theft because ultimately, if you don't pay your taxes for long enough, somebody with a gun on his hip is going to come show up at your door and say,
yep.
Hey, we got to take you away because you're not paying taxes. So I get it.
Jill makes a good point. Taxation in its current state is theft, whereas the government harbors or goes after even the weakest link in society, like gimme. Like,
Yeah.
there are definitely evils within it. But yeah, what are you gonna do? Like, I don't know what the alternative is. I would love to see some alternatives. If we were to somehow undo like one of the bricks of the foundation in our society, I would love to see it, because if there is true innovation, that's where innovation comes in. Like that, to reform that would be to reform society as we know it. So I'd love to hear ideas if they exist.
Are you familiar with the recent news out of St. Louis of the couple who was brandishing guns as rioters plowed through their streets and stuff? Okay, so what happened is, like, some Black Lives Matter protesters / rioters broke into a gated community, and they were causing a ruckus. And apparently this family, the Kowalskis, I think, were having dinner on their back porch, and the people started shouting at them, and apparently they threatened to kill their dog, and they wouldn't leave. And so the husband and wife went and they got an AR-15 and a pistol, and the guy had good trigger control, which means his finger was not on the trigger, but he was holding his gun sideways, which is a no-no. And the woman...
That is brandishing a weapon.
And the woman had her finger on the trigger and was pointing it, which is another no-no.
Wait,
Two
is
no-nos.
this that white family that they're making memes out of?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. I stand behind them 100% to defend themselves, but I do not, it's a no-no to have your gun sideways, and it's a no-no to have your finger on the trigger. But sorry.
I agree with you. Sarah's calling me. Sarah, if you're watching the stream, you have to wait.
We're almost done.
We're almost done. If someone is actively threatening the life of my dog, and they're on my property, I believe in the state of Utah, I am within my rights to shoot that person, because I don't know how I would actually react in a real situation, but holy crap, I will defend my dog. Like, if you do not do that,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but at the same time, it's like, don't point guns at people, guys. That's rude.
But as it pertains to the taxation is theft thing, I have to. You cannot shoot somebody legally unless they are an immediate threat to your life or severe damage. So, like, if somebody was raping somebody, you can kill them on the spot. But the whole thing is there's this issue about defending yourselves now, and what happened is so they defended themselves with guns, which I think I disagree with how they did it, but I agree with what they did. But people said, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. So protesters came back to their house, but this time, because they received so much heat for brandishing the weapons, they had private security. And I just think it's really interesting because there's all these cries to abolish the police. Defund, I understand, is we just want to give the police less money, but there are still people calling for the abolishment of police. Okay, so people abolish police. Who can then, all right, if assuming that the left gets their wish to, do away with guns, you can't defend yourself. You have to, hire private security or call security and then you pay for it? Okay, well, it's only going to be the rich or the upper middle class who can afford that kind of thing. So it seems to me in such a world, you essentially end up, hey, let's put all of our money together to pay for basically a police force. Like, to me, it seems like a circle where you eventually get back to paying taxes to have a police force or a pseudo police force anyways.
I think, I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that. I have my own opinions, and my goal is not to upset other people and make people think that I'm a certain way. It's just, it's a cruddy situation. I think loss of human life in any circumstance is very unfortunate, and it should be, it should not happen. And this whole defund the police, abolish the police, like restructure the police, like whatever, like at least there's something at least something is being done. At least like there is action being taken to, like, because no matter what side you're on in this, no one is pure, like, hopefully no one is pure evil, right? Like, everyone in this fight wants the best outcome. Everyone fighting this is only nurtured by their environment, right? Like, they're only nurtured by their environment and the way that they've been raised and the way that society has affected them throughout the course of their life. So it's like everyone is coming at this from so many different angles, but at least they're trying. Like, I commend that. So my only hope at the end of this whole hurricane is we take at least one step further towards that golden era that everyone reaches for in society.
The positive thing I saw too, because like you said, it's like right, left, it's like I think we all want what's best.
Yeah.
And the really positive thing that I noticed is that a lot of people on the right after this George Floyd incident or murder, a lot of people on the right I noticed have started talking about we need to demilitarize the police, because my understanding is that the police have access to military grade equipment that cycles out of use, and they can buy it at auction, I think. And
I've seen it.
I don't think the police need to have rocket launchers. I think we should have a SWAT team for sure, because that kind of threat exists. But like a police, I don't know. Like, so I'm glad to see that this is a conversation that both sides are taking seriously.
I will say that there are definitely villains within each side.
Oh yeah.
Which is unfortunate because it makes the genuine people and the authentic people look bad. The people that are actually trying to make the world a better place, it makes those people look bad. And they might not even know that they're doing it. They might not even know that they're totally disrupting a positive movement for change. But I mean, they're there. So it's just an ugly situation across the board.
That's the category I put the abolish the police people in. But I'm totally eager to have a conversation about limiting the amount of money and assets the police have.
Yeah. I think a restructuring might be necessary. I think, like, for example, my next door neighbor committed suicide 2 weeks ago. And every single time that the police came out, I think it could, I don't know if it would have, but it could have made a difference if a social worker or a therapist or some kind of person that was trained to handle that kind of mental instability, if someone like that had come with the police unit of the 7 times that they came before, it could have made a difference. I think that there are certain aspects of humans that we are not accounting for, but we're still delegating it to the police. Like, I think that's an inappropriate use of funds, because if you look at what a police officer is paid, like a starter police officer, I believe in the state of Utah, I think they start at somewhere between 20 and 30K a year. That's poverty. That's basically a part-time job, right? And they're supposed to somehow in 6 months have enough training to figure this out and to like talk people down from these terrible situations and not freak out. Like, maybe defund the police, but if you're gonna do that, like, shove the living hell out of what is left into making our police officers ready for the field. Do it, like, I would say, take a more human approach to this, because it's not cut and dry. Like, the only thing those police officers ever did with my neighbor is talk him down. The only thing they ever did was delay the inevitable.
Yep.
And it ended in a terrible, terrible way. Like, what a shitty outcome. You know, and this happens every single day, every single moment of every single day. There are people that needlessly die because a lack of attention within our social structure, basically. And I hate that. I hate the hell out of that.
It makes you wonder too, like, I don't know, I don't think this is utopian thinking, but it's like, if you cut their funding from like 100 to 70%, and you took 30% of that funding, and you could even keep it centralized, keep them all in the same building, part of the same force, but you take 30% of that and give it to trained like social workers who are trained in de-escalation and that kind of thing. And when you call 911, they say, did he make a threat on your life? Is there a threat of danger or something? No? Okay, we're going to send Jerry, the social worker, out to handle things, and it turns into something like a counseling session, and they hook you up with certain resources.
And maybe send a police officer out there with them, just in case it becomes violent. Like, there's a time and a place for everything, and especially with dangerous situations like that. And so whether you want to defund the police, abolish the police, whatever, I think no matter what the outcome is with this, I think at the end, what we have right now isn't working. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's just not working to serve its citizens. That's it. And it needs to be probably reevaluated. I don't know if the next thing they come up with, the next iteration, will be any better than what we have now. But I think, pull the dart out and throw another one back in. Why don't you? It's messed up.
I think ultimately my frustration then ends with Congress, because I understand, we talked about this too, but the Republicans brought forward some police reform that was presented, and the Democrats shot it down because they didn't get like all of what they wanted. And the Democrats put forward this other like response bill, but it had like some crazy stuff that was like taking things way too far. And as a result, because both sides were unwilling to compromise, nothing got done. So that's a lot of frustration too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Al makes a good point. My aunt is a dispatcher, and some of the stuff that she hears on the line, first of all, is like stuff I hope I never hear in my life. But yes, he is correct. They can only relay the information that they're given, and when people call the police, they're usually very panicked, or they're very flustered, and so sometimes you just can't communicate. So I know that police officers are not inherently evil. Yes, there are some that are, but not all of them. And I know that they're trying their best. I think one of the saddest things that I've seen is, I remember when I was a kid, when 9/11 happened, I remember watching full-grown men cry. Police officers, first responders, firefighters, like the whole gambit. And I could not understand what could be so wrong about adults crying like they never had before. And I feel so bad that, yes, there are villains in this world, and some of them are police officers, and I hate that. I wish it wasn't like that. And those same first responders, police officers, firefighters, people that literally pulled dead bodies out of, like they looked into the eyes of dead people and pulled them out of rubble, dismembered the whole thing, crushed limbs, the whole thing. They had to live through that, and they had to suffer that, and they will suffer through that for the rest of their lives. And those are the same police officers and firefighters and first responders that are being treated so poorly in New York now because of the actions of some stupid assholes that did some terrible thing to another human being. Like, I hate that so much. I wish that it wasn't so cut and dry with this whole thing. Like, not all of them are evil. Not all of them. That would suck, right? But yeah, so the whole thing is just ugly. The whole thing's ugly.
There's a lot of other comments that have brought up really interesting future topics of discussion.
Yeah.
Like Stacy brought up accelerationism. We're at 2 hours 45 minutes though, so I think we're probably gonna call it.
You
there.
know, we like to leave it really heavy and melancholic right there at the end. Is there any positive note we could leave it on? Jeez, we were talking about movies.
All right, well then
Who writes these
we'll do the
questions?
last one. We'll do one more. Favorite real-time strategy games or favorite grand strategy video games?
Oh, easy. Final Fantasy.
What's
Is
Real
that or a lot of turn-based strategies? What define real-time strategy?
I think real-time strategy would be something like Empire Total War.
Or like Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
Strategy? Command and Conquer. Tiberian
Conquer.
Wars.
Tiberian Wars.
Amazing. I love that. The Hand of Nod. Or the Nod. Is it the Hand of Nod? Do you ever play Command and Conquer?
Oh yeah.
Dude,
I can't remember that.
The Brotherhood of Nod. The Brotherhood of Nod is like one of the coolest villain groups ever. I love them. They're so cool. They're like this like super radical religious thing, and they worship. I don't even know what they worship. It's probably Tiberian. We worship the crystal or whatever. But yeah, I think that I didn't know Tim Curry was in it.
You didn't know this?
Tim Curry is in Command and Conquer.
He really is.
My
I was going
man.
to show you this. Yeah. So I'm going to turn up the volume so everybody else can hear this. But it's the Tim Curry bit from the one that came after Tiberian Wars, where he's like, "Hi." No, you haven't seen this. I'm not
No.
saying anything.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space!
I love that you can tell he's trying so hard not to laugh.
Because, and here's the thing, like my 8-year-old self would have been like, man,
Hell yeah,
he's
dude.
going to space.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism.
Command and Conquer was awesome. I don't know if any of the kids in here, including myself, remember a game called Dark Reign. Anyone in here ever played Dark Reign? That game was sick, dude. I loved Dark Reign. I hated StarCraft.
I love StarCraft.
Hate StarCraft.
Love
StarCraft was too fast. Like my little
very
child
tough.
brain couldn't keep up with all the moving parts, and I'd play online and
crushed by Koreans.
within seconds, dude. Like the Zerglings, that was so stupid. That's where toxic game players came from. Is StarCraft, dude. StarCraft and Dota. Like Dota and StarCraft created the toxic video game player. I mean, I like Dota, but it was hard.
Empire Total War and Napoleon Total War. Do you still like those? I love those.
Oh yeah, I'm just not very good at them.
Yeah.
I just like
Ready, your
I
muskets!
can't be bothered to like select my squadrons or units and be like, okay, move them up to this line. And then don't move because if they're in range with these long range rifles, they'll get torn apart or whatever. Like I'm just like, no,
Go!
all fireworks, nothing but rockets. Like you line the entire back of the rockets, and then you aim all of the rockets at their commander, and then you hope that like killing the general, you hope that killing the general miraculously with rockets breaks the spirits of all of the enemy's troops, and they run away.
Their morale is crushed, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, George Washington is dead.
Yeah.
Run away!"
Run away, yeah. I'm talking like hundreds of rockets. Nothing but you don't have any ground troops. So if the enemy's troops ever get to you,
You're dead.
You're just dead.
Bye.
That and it was was it? I don't remember which faction or whatever it is. Elephants.
Oh,
Elephants.
the Indians.
Can you imagine being back in that era and being trampled by an elephant?
Uh-huh.
That would definitely break some spirits.
Have you seen Alexander the Great?
No.
No. Watch the director's cut. It's really good.
Hmm.
Have you ever seen Kingdom of Heaven? The Crusades movie with Legolas? Watch the director's cut. It's really good. I'm telling you, with both of those movies, you can only watch the director's cut. The theatrical cut, they cut everything out and it's no good. You ever play Civilization?
Yeah.
Okay, I love Civilization. Okay, there's a positive note.
Wow.
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 Don't be sad. Okay.
Anything else we need to touch on here in the comments before we go?
Everybody celebrates Tim Curry. He's
Hell
still
yeah.
alive.
I feel so bad for him. Like that's a tragedy right there. That is wrong. You can't say anything, but that situation is wrong. What happened
really
to him
sad.
Was a crime. I
Chad
hate
says,
that.
"Miss you guys." I say we should have another barbecue then.
Yeah.
A little barbecue. We finally got the house in order. We got our backyard, and we have the ability to barbecue now. We had Healy and Prime over last weekend, and we did some grilling, and that was a really nice time. Zach says he wants to hang out with us as well. Well, let's arrange a gay date and go hang out with each other. I would love to. I miss hanging out with Zach.
I don't even know if Zach actually exists anymore.
Come to think of it, yeah. Why don't you prove to us that you exist, Zach?
Provide proof for verification.
Okay. Stacy, I will say hi to Rachel, and you will say hi for Sarah.
Yes.
And we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Parting challenge. I've said this before, but it's a really good one, and it's really good, and I like it. But before the end of the weekend, you have to forgive somebody.
Oh.
Forgive somebody, even if it's yourself.
Yeah, and my challenge would be to actively, try and infect someone with the coronavirus.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding. Please don't do that.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye. She wants over to Uncle Austin so bad.
Oh.
Oh, my Lord.